You all set with the, okay. It's the Board of Health meeting for the 27th of January. The time is 7 o'clock. The only information to be discussed is what is on the agenda. Discussion requests to discuss new information may be put on the next agenda, and no interruptions between speakers must go through the chair, and the health agent's report is provided by the health agent. If there is any questions, they need to go through the chair, just so everybody knows where we're coming from. And the first on the agenda tonight is citizens' participation.
And Madam
Point
Chair,
of order.
well,
Is
go ahead.
there, point of order, is there audio recording as typical at these meetings?
It is being televised as well as being being recorded, auditorily.
And that was exactly my question too, Madam Chair, so
Sorry
thank you.
about that.
Just so the public would know.
So we have citizens' participation.
Hi, Joel Arbeitman, Woodridge Lane. I had come to speak to this committee a bunch of months ago, I can't remember the exact time frame, talking about looking into various restrictions on private wells, either the digging of new private wells and/or looking toward putting the same kinds of restrictions on private well water that the town has chosen to put at various times and under certain circumstances on town-supplied water. And I've been doing a bunch of research since then, and I wanted to address this issue. At the time, I was told that the hydrology maps that the town has showed that there was no connection between the town wells, or the aquifers that feed the town wells, and most private parcels throughout Ashland, not mentioning any specific parcel. And that has been the standard. That's been the standard as to determine whether you grant or don't grant permits. And I think from where we're at this point, that's probably an okay standard. But things have changed. We now have the new SWIMI regulations coming out. We have the town, I know you have them on your agenda later, which I think is just great. I'm glad to see that you're televising this meeting, because I think it's very important for all the residents to be educated about this. The new SWIMI regulations put a tremendous emphasis on not having water transported pretty much through stormwater or sewage drains outside of the current basin. The goal is to keep water here in Ashland, so it rains or it comes in through aquifers, however, whatever our capture method is, and the goal is to keep it here. So, given this, I have done quite a bit of research. In fact, just today I learned that California has changed and so that there's precedent for this nationally now, because they really are a bellwether state for oftentimes where the rest of the country ends up going. California now has changed their laws to give public regulation and control over private wells. And this is based on the concept, the theme they use is something called the public trust, meaning that it comes within the public purview to regulate. They're especially concerned not just about, and this is important for Ashland to give consideration to this, not just about whether any parcel and its aquifers under the ground where someone might propose to dig a well connect, the phrase they used was hydrologically connect to the wells at House Street, but whether it also connects to public water sources such as the Sudbury River or Cold Spring Brook or other aquifer, other surface waterways in town. It seems inconceivable to me. I mean, I guess just thinking about this logically, when I saw some of the maps that Mark had, and I guess some of the request is to maybe we need to do more hydrological studies, hard to say. It seems inconceivable that aquifers from all over town are not draining down into the Sudbury River or draining down into Cold Spring Brook. It seems like that there is a public connection to these private parcels. And I'm trying to jump around in this and not read this whole thing. So the first request would be, I'd like to, one other point, I guess I should emphasize this. I've been spending quite a bit of time at the Water Policy Committee meetings. I'm not a member of the committee. And they are in the process of proposing a new water policy for town meeting this May. And in that policy, they are going to call for the elimination of the current ban on new irrigation systems, which I oppose. I don't support that. And I asked, well, why are you doing that? And the answer I got was, well, you know, what we're finding is that we're getting far more requests for private wells since we put that into effect. You'll have to speak to them about that as to if that's the basis of their decision-making, but that's what I was told. If that's true, the concern is that we have sort of a race to the bottom here. You know, that the town, where the town voted to ban new irrigation systems for those that use the public water supply. And now, if indeed the result is, and they're concerned about this, which is what they said to me, that, you know, they're getting a lot more permit requests for private wells, especially in new development areas, then, you know, it seems like we're settling for if you can't beat them, join them. It seems the problem here, to me, that we have a separation in the authorities of who regulates. You regulate the private water, and the selectmen and the Water Policy Committee regulate the public water. And I'm concerned that we don't have a consensus as to what the goal should be, and that we can establish policies that support each other, that are symbiotic, rather than have these conflicting policies where we can't seem to implement what the town sets as its objectives. So given all of that, I guess the first request is to see, you know, whether we can have maybe a public forum with the Board of Health and with the Water Policy Committee, perhaps the Selectmen, or whatever, maybe the Sustainability Committee, whoever the relevant interested committees are, and offer some public discussion to the residents so that we can try to arrive at some kind of consensus as to what the laws are, what's possible, what the values of the community are, and so on. I think that would be great. And in the interim, what I'd like to see is a moratorium until we get more information with a subsequent, more detailed hydrological study to really understand the impact of the aquifers, until we learn more about the implications of the swimming regulations that really talk about doing everything we can to keep Ashland's water here in Ashland, and that I'd like to see a moratorium put on new private wells completely. And I'd also like to see, until we have further information, I'd like to see private wells subject to the identical regulations that the public water supply is subject to. So that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Joel.
I have a question, Joel. SWIMI represent, what, SWMI, this is more for the public because I'm reading it, but do we know what SWMI stands for?
Not at this moment.
Okay.
But
I said that out loud because in case somebody.
appreciate
Because
that.
when I said SWIMI, I was trying to.
Excuse me, Judith, would you please go through the chair before asking questions as was outlined in the beginning of the meeting?
Surely.
Thank you.
Madam, may I ask the?
Yes, you may.
So I guess that's my question, but I guess, so, that's all, Joel. Thank
Right,
you.
well, I just want to say that they are statewide regulations that are just coming out now. And the basic idea of them, and David Manoogian, our DPW director, is very involved in trying to address this as to what policies and infrastructure the town would need to develop to comply with them. He's looking at a wastewater treatment plant. The town has formed a storm wastewater committee,
Yes.
which is looking at possibly fixing fees, you know, assigning fees to residents based on the amount of their paved surfaces on their property and so on. The whole objective of this is to build up Ashland's water table, to stop using our water as much and to retain more water within Ashland. And you know, that, to me, that seems like we should be doing absolutely everything we possibly can do to conserve. And you know, I think we need to take a fresh look at everything we're doing, private wells, public wells, and everything else, to see what is the best for the town.
Okay.
Thank
Mark,
you.
did you have any comment?
Madam Chair, on that there, I have spoken to David Manoogian as well, and There's some concerns that we would need to bring to legal counsel related to a moratorium, so I made a note to check with legal counsel. Other towns have considered doing this and then have been basically told they couldn't. From either the Attorney General, Georgetown and Hopkinton are two of those towns over the past 20 years. So I'm trying to find some town that may have a regulation related to abandoning, to the restrictions on irrigation wells, but I haven't been able to find any towns, and I would ask Joel or anyone else if they can produce regulation from a town that has these type of regulations. That would be very helpful. I have tried to research it and haven't found any yet.
Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Katrin?
Yeah. The moratorium they're talking about, is it for the irrigation wells or other wells?
Joel, I believe I'll speak if I can, Madam Chair, for
yes.
Joel. Joel, you're talking about both, right? You mentioned public water and private water. The moratorium would be for private wells for irrigation, correct? I just want to make sure. I don't want to speak for you.
And
So-
syncing the public and private policies and restrictions on the same manner.
Thank
So
you, Joel.
if it's for domestic household use, there won't be any restriction because that's the only water source for them, then we can't impose restriction on having water, because water is essential for living.
You didn't ask
Irrigation
the
wells
attorney.
is fine, right?
Yes,
Okay, I'm just.
okay.
Madam Chair, is there more time for citizens? Thank you. Kind of like being regulated like that, makes it a whole much easier. Okay, this is a very short comparison question. With the abnormally low winter with the snow, is there still a water ban or is there one coming up? Yes or no?
If I may, Madam Chair, I do not know the answer, Mark, but that answer can be provided either through the selectmen or through Water and Sewer, who handles the moratorium. If you want, give me a call tomorrow morning, and I'll work with you to get the answer.
Okay,
Thank
thank
you.
you. That's it.
Mark,
Yes.
I was just informed
Oh,
that the water ban was lifted at the last selectmen's meeting.
Oh. So, through the chairman,
Yes,
Mr. Oram, no call.
Madam Chair,
yes,
I just wanted to state that I think it's unfortunate that we're not making better contact with the public on when we go into a ban or when we come out of a ban. I really do believe that that's something very important that the public should be made more aware of, and possibly we
Agree.
can do something to help that situation.
okay. Any other citizens' participation?
Hi, Brett Spinizzola, 13 Forest Avenue,
Yes,
Ashland. I'd like to say what a good thing it is that the meetings are televised now for transparency and a
Thank
fair
you.
shake for everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. Madam Chair, may I comment?
Yes,
I absolutely agree with that. That's one thing that I've been encouraging the board to do. And it's very, very unfortunate that this is a rare occasion, because the board had recently voted at a 3-2 vote to not regularly televise and to only do it on special occasions. I don't even believe that this one was actually planned, but I totally agree with you.
Madam Chair, if I may.
yes, Mark.
First of all and foremost, it should be known that the chairperson asked for this meeting to be televised, and I made the calls based on her request. The second thing I should note, too, is the fact that the Zoning Board of Appeals sometimes trumps us for this room, and they are right now reviewing a comprehensive plan, so we've been advised if they are meeting at the same time, until they get more connections throughout the town, that it's difficult to get on cable, but I can suggest that we are making the effort, and I know our member Margulis has promoted that as well, and we're not shy from cameras, so it's a great idea. Thank you.
Okay. Next
Madam
thing-
Chair, I just wanted to say I'm glad that you have that position. It's unfortunate that we've had the vote recently, so.
All right, next thing is Speedway, and the sale of tobacco to a minor review.
Madam Chair, if I may, has everyone signed in? We have a sign-in list, but we can pass it out versus everyone trying to get up to sign in, but I don't see many signatures. Elliot, can you just pass it out to people, and they can pass it through? After we have,
I have. It's beyond that.
two at the end for a
That's why.
reason.
After you're done, if you can just pass it around so we can get signatures. And, these are the reps for Speedway.
Okay.
I'll let them, you
Would-
probably want them to
Would you
introduce.
state your name, please?
Good evening, Madam Chair. Andrew Upton, representing Speedway LLC. With me is Wayne Bartley. Also with me are Cole Coligue, the district manager, Rebecca and Hannah, who are training district managers, and Michael, who is the general manager at the store.
Thank you. I'm sure you got your information on the check that was done.
We did get the information on the check that was done. We have been in touch with the city solicitor regarding the fine and the appropriateness of whether it was a first offense or a second offense, and I believe that has been settled and
Yes.
resolved, and the fine has been paid. The reason we're really here tonight is we wanted to tell you about the corrective measures that we have taken since this happened. There has been a retraining of the staff. We have terminated the employee, and the GM has taken this as an opportunity to sort of speak to the staff both formally and informally about the importance of tobacco control and not selling to minors. I can tell you that Speedway has a fairly sophisticated scanning system where when you go to buy tobacco, you're asked for your ID, and they scan it through a machine, and it calculates the date, and then if you're under the date, as of the day, it doesn't allow you to create the sale. The only exception to that is if an older person, I mean, there's no good examples on this board, but if someone who looked over 40 came to the place, the clerk has the opportunity to press a button that says over 40, and that's sort of an automatic override. In this case, the clerk pressed that button when the compliance check person came, and you know, I believe it was obvious to everyone that this person was well under 40, and it was really just she felt under pressure because there was a lot of customers, or she was disorganized, or she was lazy about it, and that's a fireable offense, and we fired her the next day. Because she completed the sales training, the internal protocol. She actually got a certificate about the sale of restricted items when she worked for Hess. So she had gone through all the programs and clearly knew what to do. So it had to be sort of an affirmative decision by this person to override the system and sell to the minor. Not exactly sure why that happened, but we have used that as a teaching moment to the staff because they know that in no uncertain terms, if you do that, you're going to be fired. So we just wanted to let you know that, and then we're here to answer any questions. I think Wayne would like to say a few words just before we get to that.
Madam Chairman and the board, I just want to let you know on behalf of Speedway, as the region manager over all of New England, Massachusetts, New Hampshire, and Rhode Island, that we do take this very serious. I came down tonight with my district managers to represent our company and let you know we have our commitment to sell age-restricted products appropriately and in your community. And coming to you today, I know it's kind of a formality, but it isn't to us. We take it very seriously. And I want to convey that to the board and let you know that we are committed to it, to the training, to the appropriate measures that we need to take in the stores, and also to meet the laws and regulations in the communities we do business in. We are new to this market. I've been here myself for 7 months, and I enjoy it greatly. And we are learning some new things, and we are improving our processes and programs, as Andrew indicated. So you do have our commitment, and I wanted to express that tonight. Thank you.
Okay. Can I tell you a little story? I went into your establishment 3 weeks ago. I was with someone else, and I was going in to buy cigarettes for another person. I was asked for my driver's license, and I said I didn't have it, I wasn't driving. They would not sell me cigarettes. They would not push the override. They just wanted to let you know they are doing what they're supposed to do. So kudos to you guys.
Well, thank you very much, Madam Chairman. We appreciate that. And like I said, we're committed to the process, we're committed to the board and to the community, and we'll continue that and improve on our processes and programs. Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, I have a question.
Yes, KG.
I looked at the report or the complaint form, and I see that on both this as well as the next subject matter, the receipts were not issued. And I believe that these products are taxable, and the taxes are being accounted for the government, and if the receipts are not issued, how is the tax obligation is met here? And is that not a serious issue that one should be concerned, and then shouldn't we tell them to make sure that that doesn't happen, so the government gets its tax that is due to it?
Elliot, could you answer that?
Elliot, you may have to come up to the mic. If you don't, I know you're hurting, but if you don't mind, I apologize. Right over there, Elliot. Just as a point of order.
That's fine.
Teenager, or the young adult in this case, who was 20 years old, is asked for the cigarettes, but does not ask for a receipt. It's been the policy ever since the beginning, never to ask for the receipt. You take the receipt if the receipt is given. You know,
You don't
such as
ask for it.
when you buy something at any supermarket, they give you a receipt. You know, some convenience stores give you the receipt. But a lot of times, they just make the sale and give you the change, and that's it.
Does
There's
that
no
satisfy your question, KG?
No, it's still an issue with the tax authority that, you know, there seems to be some kind of a help given to the vendor or the client for not paying the tax, which is an obligation that the store owes to the government.
The reason the teenager doesn't ask for a receipt is because this is also considered undercover
Yes.
work. And it's obvious if the teenager goes in and asks for a receipt, that obviously something's up.
Right.
All
I
right?
understand that. Okay,
So
thank you.
I may be able
I
to
think the attorney
Yep.
wants to-
answer the question directly.
If you can come up to the mic. Slide
Yeah.
over, Elliot.
Slide over, Elliot.
Sorry.
When a sale is made, whether or not the customer requests or receives the receipt does not change the fact that the cash register and the POS system records it. And on that basis, we pay our sales and use, our excise tax, all of the state taxes that are required. It's not based on the receipts we give, it's based on the internal calculation of sales by the cash register,
Thank
which
you.
they have to make when they take cash, so it goes into the system.
Thank
But-
you.
This,
KG?
this information provided on that complaint sheet that was produced by our agent here doesn't reflect the fact that the tax receipt was printed out of the machine where it was calculated by the machine to pay. So it only tells me that the tax receipt was not collected, that's what it is. And to our agent's point that it's going to be difficult when there is an undercover agent to ask for a receipt. But the transaction has already happened. The violation has already happened when they do that. So post the violation, they can ask the receipt for whatever, it doesn't matter, the violation is still there. So
Okay.
that shouldn't,
It's
that
something we
shouldn't
can-
excuse the person who is going for checking out,
That's something we
Ask.
can take under advisement, KG.
tax issues
No,
cannot
no,
be
I mean,
taken
as
as
far as,
advisement, but we need.
as far as asking,
Asking for receipts.
requesting a receipt.
Okay.
Madam Chair, if I can ask Elliot a question that may help clarify that? Do I have your permission?
Yes.
Thank you. So Elliot, you had mentioned it's not in the, I think you said, the policy. I haven't actually been given full background on our program. Is that a policy that's been established by a regional?
Well, it was the
What
policy
policy?
established when they changed these forms and added the receipt checkbox. They wanted to make sure that all the compliance officers knew to instruct the individuals working with them not to ask for a receipt.
So my question is, whose policy? Is it this town's policy, this
No,
board's
not this
policy, a
town
regional?
policy, it's state policy.
Oh, it's state policy, perfect, thank you.
Okay,
That's what
DC
I wanted to
under
know.
Tobacco Control Program,
Okay,
which is now part of Substance Abuse Services.
Okay, thank you, Elliot.
Thank you.
I thank you for coming and
Thank you very much.
your plan of handling it.
And Madam Chair, if I
Yes.
may, we usually talk about, it was the first offense by definition of your company being Speedway, but the board does like to emphasize that if it happens again, there's going to be greater consequences and fines and as well as the loss of your, and we know that's a major issue, but you should understand, if I may, Madam
Yeah.
Chair, that in our regulations, there will be a loss of sale of tobacco, and our regulations are changing to increase those penalties. So hopefully we'll never see you again, and we don't want to see you again, but it's within a time period too. So if you have any questions on our regulations, you have our newest ones. The fines will be adopted as soon as the Attorney General, which most likely will be beginning of March, adopts our fines. You're more than welcome to call. I know Mike has had questions, your manager at times, but always feel free to contact us, because the second time is not going to be, it'll be quite different from the first sale.
Thank you very much, and we
Thank
do
you.
Thank you.
definitely appreciate your time tonight. Thank you.
And next on the agenda is Wine Empire, sorry.
Good evening.
Good evening. Your name?
Yes, Gianluca Guiroli, owner of Wine Empire,
Okay,
12B West Union Street, here in Ashland.
okay. And you also had a failing of the compliance check and selling to a minor, and your corrections that have been made?
Correct. We were informed about the violation. First and foremost, we want to take full responsibility for our act. We acknowledge the mistake, just in the circumstances, festivities, busy customers, distributors. Right after I was informed and called by Mr. Orm, I went back to the store at the closing hours. I had a meeting formally with our 2 employees, just the 3 of us, going through the procedures. Now, for us, selling tobacco, because we're a wine and beer shop, is a very incidental activity. Nevertheless, I stress how important is the controlled tobacco rules and the observation of such rules. So it doesn't excuse the fact that we did make that sale and we did make the mistake. Also, what we did, we were invited to participate to the compliance training. Unfortunately, that day, my manager was out sick, so I'm hoping that this is going to be offered again, so we can all attend in different time, in different hours of the day. If not in the near future, I'll do whatever I can. I actually call a couple of distributors that sell tobacco products to see if they themselves or someone else offer, even under payment, to go through a full training program for that. In the interim, what we have done, we have a fairly sophisticated POS system. So we have worked with the company that provide the system to download an applications that essentially every time you run a tobacco sales will prompt you a reminder to ask ID. Because many people don't know, but for sales of alcohol products, you have this rule that if you don't have wrinkles or you don't look 40 years or younger, you actually don't need to ask an ID. Perfect, to your example, Madam Chair, before, regardless of the age and the look of the individual that is acquiring or purchasing tobacco products, you nevertheless have to ask at all time an ID. So that's what we stressed in that meeting. We testing the application this week. It was released yesterday. I'm hopeful to implement it in the next couple days. That is something else that we want to do that help us in that busy time. Everybody gets distracted, negligent, maybe for a second. That will cost, obviously, first and foremost to the minor and the public, and also us from a business perspective, a great deal of suffering.
I must say, I was surprised that your establishment was one that sold, since even to go in there, you should be 21 because of the alcohol that's sold. I mean, I know you have younger people that come in, but
Yep.
You automatically think they sell alcohol, they've got to be 21. So I was rather surprised that you got caught.
Yeah, well, it's, there is no specific rules that wine and beer and liquor establishment cannot let citizen under 21 enter your establishment. I've been in some of those in other towns. It's just right off the bat, like the control that they put in place. Reality is our store does carry these products, such as wine and beer, but we also do food, we also do beverages, and we have a coffee sections. We actually have a tons of, families coming in with their kids. And with this, other specific rule, we wouldn't have the ability to do that.
No, I understand that.
Yeah,
Like I
but
said, I was
it-
just
yes.
surprised. Mark, do you have any?
If I may, so even more reason to, you say you have the opportunity for younger people to go in, so even more reason to be cognizant of the age issue and to ask for the ID. And again, Madam Chair and board members, this is the first violation. It is a new vendor. I think he understands and admits to the concern, and the training, we can see if there's future trainings in the area. Unfortunately, I understand sometimes scheduling is difficult, and you did the right thing if the person was ill. We don't want you bringing someone ill into our audience. That would not be good. At the same time, as mentioned to the previous person that sold tobacco, realize the second time will be different. There hopefully won't be a second time within 3 years, because the first thing that will happen is you'll lose your license for 7 days after you meet with the board, and then you're getting closer to the third time, and that could be 30 days or more. So with all that said, just be aware of that, and I just want you to know that if you have any, that's the effective, actually it's changed, so I can get you, if you don't have the new regulations, actually those penalties have increased, that's the old penalties. So again, you need to be cognizant of the fact that younger people could go in there. And Elliot could attest to this, that when the comprehensive inspection is completed, the way they do it, they don't have an ID. So if the person that goes to the clerk asks for an ID, then that would be solved. But person wasn't, in both cases, the person was not asked for an ID, and that's the way these are set up. So it wasn't like they were trying to entrap anyone and so forth. A person just walked in, asked for a pack of Marlboros, I believe they were Marlboro Lights, and was sold. So just be aware of that and be cognizant.
Yes,
The way you were denied the sale of cigarettes at Speedway because you didn't have your ID,
right,
that's the way it should be at all the stores.
exactly.
Or been-
No, I said kudos to them, but, I wasn't real happy at the time having to stop a second place.
And Madam Chair, just for, it's hard for the audience that's listening in to
Right.
hear Elliot, but Elliot was just re-emphasizing that fact, that in fact, when you went in, thankfully, anyone without an ID should not be able to buy or purchase
agree.
cigarettes or tobacco products. Thank you,
All right,
Elliot.
thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Moving on, we're a little bit ahead of time, Mark.
Yes.
Would you like to start some of your,
Well, just so you know, at 7:45, I just want to make sure they're here. We have an attorney representing the owner of 117 Winter Street. You are here?
okay.
Okay, I just want to make sure. We have a few minutes, so we'll be ready for you at 7:45. And we have the agreement. So if you'd like, I can start some of my, well, we can start with some of the old new business. And prior to that, just so the board knows, so I can go over each item on the agenda, it may make it easier and smoother.
Absolutely.
So that 117 Winter Street will be the first time we've seen a request for an exemption from a Title V inspection. At the same time, they are planning to review that with the board, and they'll explain why they're asking for that. The attorney for the owner will be here, is in the back. Water Policy Committee, they wish to come in and review what they've been doing presently, and David Menugian sent me an email asking if they could meet with the board. It's a meet and greet and more an explanation of the work they've been doing. Then we have engineers coming in and representatives for the Lantern at Warren Woods. That's right across from the present Warren Woods and the Warren Center. That's where the
4-H.
town hall was, in the 4-H club, in the satellite town hall when this one was being built. They'll be looking for irrigation wells, and it's required in our regulation that the board review it and approve it. Under old and new business, I can start from there if you'd like.
Sure. Go right
Substance Abuse Prevention Collaborative Memorandum of Understanding. Just so the board knows, I was planning to bring that up at our next meeting, and in between our meetings, there was a need for it to be signed prior to our meeting. So Michael Herbert, our assistant town, well, at that time, our assistant town manager, I believe, or he might have been town manager at the time of signing, asked that we consider it. It was to promote a program that Decisions at Every Turn, which is our substance abuse program at the schools, wants to take on, so we can continue to sustain our work that we do as it relates to substance abuse. And by having a regional effort, as we do with tobacco, it helps us to move forward with the surrounding towns in many ways. One, we all are working towards the same goals, same mission. So, and at the same time too, if there's any type of adoptions or new information, the region benefits from it. So with that said, this was to endorse what Decisions at Every Turn was asking us to do. So that was signed on behalf of the board as your health agent. And I'm updating the board. If, I don't know if any board members have any questions, but it's actually a positive situation for the board.
Absolutely.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Question for Mark?
John.
I know, I see here the copy we have that the town manager and yourself have signed, has the
Yep.
chief of police and superintendent of schools and the,
I believe the same day.
is everything completed?
Yeah, I believe
Okay.
they did it the same day. It was there was some urgency to having it signed, so the same day. What happened was Amy Turncliffe, who is the person that is I don't know if she's the chair, I believe. She may be the director of Decisions at Every Turn. She was going door to door that day because she was in a very anxious moment to get this signed. So I believe she said she was heading to see the police chief next. If it wasn't that day, I'm sure it was within 2 days or so.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Chair,
Okay. Yes, KG.
clarify to me that it's emergency or urgency?
To her, she had to have it signed for us to join the
So
group.
that was urgency.
Urgency.
There was no emergency issue.
No, we wouldn't, we might have missed our opportunity. I can
No, that's
ask
fine, that's
Amy,
urgency.
Madam Chair, if I may,
Yes.
I can ask Amy Turncliffe I think it would be good for her to come to one of our meetings to help with this discussion, as well as to help with just what they have done over the year, and also how they've helped us. They've helped us as it relates to tobacco control. And is there something that you would like her to
No,
discuss?
the-
I'd be glad to.
When you use the word emergency, I thought there was some kind of a
It was urgent. Amy came
catastrophic
in.
issue that needed to be taken care of.
Yeah, according
No,
to,
but that was not the issue, but it's an urgency that
Urgency as
because of
opposed
some
to
time,
emergency.
time
Yes.
basis or something, okay.
Okay.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Judith.
you call me Judy if you like. It's okay, you don't have to be so formal.
I'm sorry.
I know Mark in the past has objective if I ask direct questions of him, like other members have. So do I have your permission to
Yes.
ask him questions?
Yes.
Thank you so much. It's great we're televised. So, there were a couple of things. We've actually gone back and forth several times in emails. So I guess I wanted to clarify things if people don't actually know this, because I have, there had been a discussion, so I've been going all to all the Decisions at Every Turn events as a representative of the board, and they're an absolutely terrific group, and I wholeheartedly support them. What I found out about this, though, it was rather interesting because the grant was one of those collaborative attempts to get boards of health together in a regional attempt. So it was 5 communities working together for this grant application. And there are 4 boards of health from other towns. Hudson's one of them. I'm not sure what the other 3 towns are. I don't have my emails in front of me. But in our town, it was Decisions at Every Turn that they chose to work with. And I think that was actually really great because that is a terrific organization. And I think the other point, I support this. I don't believe Amy had an urgency per se, except she's a very, I can't speak for her. She's a very organized person, and she wanted to get this in so we could be effective. My concern, though, is that what I had discussed with her is that it's signed as the Board of Health Director. And, state law indicates that we 5 members of this board can have an agent that represents us within certain parameters. So as our agent, I would recommend that in the future, you make it clear to individuals that when you sign, you're signing as an agent, and that when we look at our policies and procedures, that we develop something where we have board delegation for any agents that we choose to delegate to. Because as state law defines, we as the board hold all of that responsibility, and it's only upon our specific delegation do we give it to someone else. So I just wanted to make those few points.
Okay. Anything else, Mark?
No, the form was already set up for my signature.
Right, no, that's
I
fine.
can sign it either way. If you notice in my signature, I do sign as health agent / director.
Right,
I act as both,
which is your title.
yes.
Okay, you want to move on with your report?
Madam Chair, when he says director of
The
the
Department of
Health
Health.
Department, not
Yeah,
the
yeah.
director of the board.
He's-
No.
No,
And
But
and
if you want me
that's-
to someday, KG, to answer
You're
your
welcome.
question, I'd be glad to take on that responsibility. The town has given me that responsibility since 1996, and I've had that authority since then, and it's to help move the department along when it comes to administrative decisions that need to be worked out with town management, and the health agent part is to represent the board when the board cannot meet, which you only meet in these sessions, so that's why I've been given that directive too, as most health agents and directors have in the state of Massachusetts by the chapter and verse that, well, I don't know if you mentioned the chapter, but per chapter 111 of the state general laws.
Well,
you, Mark.
excuse me, Madam Chair, I just wanted to clarify what Mark had said, because I believe what he's saying is that most towns are working, their agents are working for the town manager? Is that what you just said? Because I believe our situation here right now is that, and this is something obviously I think we should be discussing with the charter committee, but our health agent actually wears 2 hats, but the job responsibilities, the job description for the health director or agent / director is specifically administrative. It specifically works for the town manager. So I think when we're looking at our policy and some procedures, it's going to be really important that we work with other committees like the Charter Committee to help clarify that situation. Because there are times when the public health needs of this elected independent board may be different than what the intent and the desire of potentially the Board of Selectmen, which is what the town administrator responds to. So
Okay.
it puts us in a real
Yeah,
iffy
and if I
situation.
can, Madam Chair, and it's a very
Yes.
good point. So we go back to when the charter was reviewed 10 years ago and presented at on the town floor, and it was presented when this board became 3 to 5 members. They're good points because it's historical in a way. Indeed, the town felt, not just the Board of Health, where they have an agent like the planning board, the library, and the assessor. We were all agents and we remained agents, but what the town felt in the charter committee back in that time was that due to the complications and the laws related to employee rights, employee human resources, that it would be best, and this is what the town voted for, to have the 5 of us, there were 5 of us, I believe, come under the authority of the town manager as it relates to human resources and employee rights. And again, we still all end up being agents for our respective boards.
Right.
That's where it came from, just so you know. Originally, it wasn't like that.
Yeah, I am aware of that.
Oh, okay, I didn't know if you knew that. Thank you.
Oh, absolutely. But
Okay.
it still puts us in a tough situation, but we'll talk about that some other time.
That's fine.
All right, Mark, you want to continue? Oh, you've got 2 minutes.
Yes, I know. So, I know we drifted on the substance abuse, but by all means, the next one would be the organic pest management regulations are ready for signature.
Okay.
Okay, so do I have the ones you want them to
Kudos to
sign?
Ed for putting that all together.
Okay. So I guess I have the ones that are to be signed, so if you can give me just a minute. Laura is very, very organized, the Board of Health signatures. Yep. And so there they are.
Thank you so much.
And Madam Chair, if I may,
Yes.
I'll let Ed speak on most of this if he wishes, but we are planning, we've been, not planning, we've been speaking with Dave Menuchyan, Eric Heidemann, and also Scott Brown, not the one that's had run for, whatever he ran for, state senate, I believe, but Scott Brown, who owns Cobblestone Landscape, because they also do our fields. Some of the town, not all of them, but some of the town fields. So we plan to continue to meet with them. Ed was just very helpful just recently on, and I'll let you go from there, Ed, on giving the schools some advice on purchases for this following fiscal year.
Send them back.
Go ahead, Ed, if you want, I'm
We
sorry.
had talked to Dave, and we were gonna try to coordinate before the growing season begins. And he can give us his proposed schedule and what somebody was going to do, whoever that may be, and then we would approve it in advance. That way, because last year we had a couple of last-minute emergency approvals,
Right.
and it caught everybody by surprise. Some of the things that they were using last year may not be valid under the new regulation. It deals only with town property. The sole purpose of the regulation, as everyone knows, is to prevent children from coming in contact with dangerous chemicals, and especially herbicides. So we will probably meet with Dave again. We met with him twice, actually, met with Dave
Yes.
twice. And he will give us, we can
Email
have a further
communication.
discussion on
Yep.
that.
Yeah, he was very receptive too.
Yes, very,
Yes.
very.
Okay.
Yeah, and he got back to us also, back to the board. on
Madam
that.
Chair, Ed,
Yes,
you
KG.
you had suggested that the same thing could be taken over to the daycares and other private places. Maybe we should have a healthy discussion with them to make sure they could adopt it on their own.
That'd be a good idea, absolutely,
We had discussed that
you-
previously.
yes.
I suggest that you lead that discussion with them if you can.
We had discussed previously about putting together a list of acceptable products to use in the town. Where they're private contractors, we cannot enforce that that is all they can use. But it's a suggestion that, in fact, this is what we prefer they use in our town.
Highly recommended.
Right, but in this case, going to the schools or private schools or daycares, and that gives them an additional benefit of announcing to the public that this is what we do, so your children are being taken care of very well here. So it may be worthwhile talking to the owners or representatives of these private schools and let them know that this is what we're doing in the public arena, and then we'd like to see if you can adopt on your own. That would help.
That's a good idea.
So that's part of education to these daycare owners or daycare operators.
Right. Okay, Mark.
Okay, and next,
You're past time.
yeah, we're all set with the signatures, by the way? Are they
I
all
wanted
set?
to look at before I sign, so
Okay,
I'll pass
just
it back to you
so
in a
we
few
know where they
minutes.
went. I didn't know if they were ready or not.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And then vote on waivers for food establishments. So there's several. I can either read them off, or
Mark,
you can
we'll-
look at your list.
We're at 7:45. so we
Oh,
need to,
I'm sorry, so we can do that another point
Right.
in the meeting.
117
So
Winter Street.
117 Winter Street, if you can come up. Just so you know, if I may, Madam Chair, we do have your waiver, I think it's yours that you produced. There's a, like a.
The agreement.
Yeah, the agreement, I mean, not waivers, so we shouldn't have that. It looks like this here. It hasn't been filled in yet, but pretty much Dan will need to sign it, and the board will need to approve it, and I'll let the attorney, you're the attorney, correct?
I am.
Yeah, I'll let you explain who you are, and if Mary's okay with that, the chair, and we'll go from there.
Thank
Go
you.
right ahead.
My name is Alan Shockett. I'm here representing Dan Aho, who unfortunately couldn't be here tonight. A couple of weeks ago, Dan purchased a property, 117 Winter, and recognized prior to sale that the system had failed. Normally, you find that out by getting an inspection. He didn't bother with the inspection because he recognized the situation. Mark had been concerned that by not getting the inspection, that it was somehow outside of the protocol, but the Title V regs do contemplate that a transfer that would not require an inspection so long as the owner were to agree that the system would either hook up to sewer or be upgraded within a 2-year period, and be accountable for that in writing to the board, which is why we drafted up that agreement for Mark's review. To that end, we'd like to start working on the design now, hopefully for a spring installation, as work is being done at the property.
This really, I don't think, would be any different from any other project where a building permit will be requested from the building department, and they'll need Title V upgrade approval from the board before any occupancy could take place at the property. So to that end, we certainly are amenable to putting it in writing to the board that the upgrade will take place during Dan's ownership of the property and won't be transferred without that Title V passing and passing the Board of Health.
If I may, yeah, on this property, I actually spoke to Dan before he headed out, and Alan and I spoke to some degree as well. There's one condition that we placed on all previous ones that we deal with where it's a little different because they haven't inspected the septic system, but where they're upgrading the replacement septic system, we require that they have at least the construction of the system complete with an as-built, not the final grades, but just the construction for all previous ones prior to rough electrical inspection. That way, as noted, they can start the construction process and so forth. Obviously, they can't start the septic system construction until they have the approved septic plan. But the engineer called today, and I told him we'd be meeting tonight, and I would support this with that one additional condition, that the septic system construction be in place at the point of rough electrical, which would be the house is mostly fully constructed.
Respectfully, I don't know, it seems kind of arbitrary to me, only because nobody can occupy the premise until the septic is approved by the Board of Health anyway. We're certainly not going to have a certificate of occupancy until that's done. And frankly, we're doing construction over the winter time, and therefore the septic can't go in until
Spring.
the thaw. So all that would do would be to limit the amount of construction that can be done over the next few months. And as I say, I think there are protections in place, not only by virtue of Dan's written agreement to get the work done, but also that the building inspector will simply not allow occupancy until that's in. And it just seems unnecessary, if you will, because all it's going to do is slow down the work. I'm not sure it gets you what you're looking for.
Well, if I may, Madam Chair, first of all, the building permit can't be issued till you have an approvable septic system plan. That's going to take soil testing, submittal to the Board of Health, so a building permit to even construct will not start until that. That's state requirement. So that's bringing us through February, maybe into March.
Okay.
So now we're in the spring where a septic system can be installed. It's actually not impossible to install in March. In fact, March is a good month to install. I don't see it stopping progress. If anything, I see it coordinated with the progress you'll make out there, because if you have heavy equipment, sometimes they use that at the same time as they're constructing. It works out well for the applicant. It's a control we've had for years, and the reason we have that control is, yes, you do mention the building permit, and you mention the occupancy permit. And at the same time, we have seen issues, not with you, but with others, where they've occupied prior to getting their occupancy permit. So this assures us they won't be using the old septic system or occupying without a septic system until at least we know it's constructed. And by the time you get to rough electrical, I would hope the whole structure would be up. The system could go in. It only takes 1 or 2 weeks to construct a septic. So I think some of those arguments, one, we'd be setting a precedent as a new process. Two, I don't see where, if it did become an issue, I would bring it back to the board.
My concern is that you're assuming that we're going to have a winter like we have now, and we could get creamed in March, and it could set us way back, and then they can't do any work in the house because of this, what I believe is an arbitrary requirement.
Well,
I mean, respectfully, the other construction projects that Dan's ever done with the town, there's no requirement that the septic go in before certain thresholds are reached in construction. I don't know why that would happen here. I just...
Madam
Dan-
Chair, if I may be.
Yes, KG?
Do we have a plan or anything here, or the location of the house, or where it is? It's on, other
We
than
can
the
get
address
those.
here, whether it is.
This was just for the waiver, but we can get that to you, and I can do that. That's easy to do.
Is that the one property close to the wetland also?
It's near the wetlands, you may have seen it in conservation.
No, we didn't see anything there.
Yeah, the house burned down this summer,
Mm.
and they just topped off the foundation last week or the
Yeah.
week before. So, but to answer some of those questions, again, I can't predict the weather, you can't either.
Right, that's the
But these
concern.
controls have been in place. We actually had a house that was being built through November, December, and they were able to put the system in. Systems can go in. As I noted, I would ask for the condition, you could always come back to the board. Again, you won't even be able to construct anything until you get a building permit. And you can't get a building permit because you need to do the soil testing, which you're planning to do in the middle of winter, which is the same as starting a system. So I just find that argument not suitable for this control that we've had for all these years. And again, if it doesn't work for you, I can.
Construction?
Should I stop?
Go ahead, Mac.
Okay. If it doesn't work for you, I would definitely bring it right back to the board for review.
I just don't want it, the construction process held up on what I believe to be something that will, obviously will get done as soon as weather permits.
I'd recommend that condition, Madam Chair.
Madam Chair?
Yes,
Do we have a copy of what Mark is referring to?
The condition?
The condition?
The condition is that they construct the system up to rough electrical.
So, but we don't have, like, that's not in writing, is that?
No, that
Right,
would
it's
be
not
my
draft.
condition.
Okay.
Request to the board.
And just to clarify, this is a foundation we're starting from. So we're already into almost late January.
Mhm.
We're late January. February, March, I mean, anyone who, you'd have to be pretty.
My client's pretty,
You would have to be pretty eager builders
Yep.
or developers to get that property going before 3 months.
oh, it'll be gone. It'll be moving. If I know.
So
my client.
you believe by April 1st that it would potentially be able to be occupied? I guess
No,
that's
I
really
don't,
my
I think that's a
question.
little early, but pretty close. But we'll see. It's tough for me to judge. I'm not the builder.
yes, Ed.
Madam Chair, they could have that thing framed in a month,
Yeah.
less than a month. We built my whole life. We
Yeah.
built one house in 1 month in January. But nevertheless, we do have a precedent in the town. And I think that to treat this situation different sends the wrong message.
I wasn't familiar that there had been other situations under
Yes.
this
Yeah.
regulation.
Just recently, I can give you an address and one prior. So we do, I gave those to Dan as
Did you?
well.
Okay.
I'm not familiar with those precedents.
Yeah, what we do is we've had those for years. Most of this won't come to the board because they will inspect the septic system, see that it's failed. And if it's failed, they go ahead and start the process. Unfortunately, they didn't want to do that step, which caused for them to have to do this waiver. So we don't know if the septic system has failed or not. And they are planning, I give them credit for going forward. They're gonna get going on the soil testing, but unfortunately, you mentioned when they can the construction could happen, but until the septic plan, the design is to the office, the engineers need time to design. First, they need time to get out and soil test. We may need time for groundwater adjustments, so that could bring you a month advanced into almost the month of the end of February. So now we're looking at March, the engineer goes forward and designs the plan, submits to us. They may need a couple weeks, we'll definitely need 2 to 3 weeks. We're into close to April before the septic plan can be approved. Once the septic plan's approved, then we can approve the building proposal. So just don't see why the septic system issues are being brought up. I can see if you were here in November, I could see that issue, but, you're almost running out of, hopefully, winter. I'm sure everyone in this audience is wishing for the same. But again, I'm not gonna predict the weather. You're right, we could get big storms in April. Again, I just feel it can be done, and if it couldn't, I offer the opportunity to come back to the board and change the requirement.
Mark, you've referred to this as a waiver,
I would ask you to go through,
and I
I can't
respectfully,
talk directly.
Mac,
I'm sorry,
you can address him.
I apologize.
Okay.
You've been referring to this as a waiver, and I don't know that this is
Agreement,
necessarily a
agreement.
waiver. This is contemplated in the DEP regs. This is
Yeah.
not anything that's contrary to
Yeah. The approving
to the
authority,
statute.
but if I may, because we've seen these before on town sewer, where the board saw it, and I don't know if you were here, Mary, but we saw it down on Pond Street. But it was when people didn't want to update their system but wanted to sell the house. and wanted to tie into sewer, we had allowed this agreement to go forward, but with the Board of Health authority and approval. But we did require, no matter what, the Title V septic system to be inspected, even though they got the agreement to give them an extension of time versus the 2 years. They still had, they were looking to have the septic system not inspected, but this is a little different. But the board at that time required that the septic system be inspected. So we've seen these, but when town
Respectfully,
sewer is
that wouldn't be
available.
required under the statute, but,
Madam
so
Chair,
No, that's just what we did.
Yep.
Yes, Judy?
I'm actually quite uncomfortable with a lot of this conversation because I know in the past I've asked for gross data in terms of an Excel spreadsheet. Because this board gets no routine information about what the health agent does in terms of septics in the town. We only get those occasional individuals who come in front of us who need a variance or has some, because we're talking about history here, I have no data. I have nothing. I don't even have what you're proposing in a written format. So I'm very uncomfortable with us 5 members of this having this recommendation from the agent based upon no history. And I actually have a question for you because I don't understand exactly what you're requesting versus what so what's being requested is a certain point of construction at the electrical, but what would you like to see? What's your proposal?
what I would propose, what I would prefer would be that, as with other construction projects, that the septic be installed prior to the certificate of occupancy being issued by virtue of the Board of Health passing on the septic system. Now it's being required, what Mark is requiring is that, what is it, the rough electric and rough plumb be
If I may.
as far as we can go
Yeah,
before
just to
that goes there?
clarify, yes, it's, step one, you do need to do the soil testing. And spoke to your engineer, that can be scheduled for next week. Step two is the engineer, as I mentioned, needs to go through the process of determining groundwater, design a plan, get it to us for review. This board may need to review waivers, so that could take 6, 8, 10 weeks. So you're not, at the point of a building application being approved until the septic plan's approved. Once that septic plan's approved, then a building permit will issue as long as it matches the bedroom count. Then they could start together. That's what most will do, is they'll start the septic system at the same time as the construction of the house. Typically, the system's in a lot quicker than getting right through rough, well, they could be about the same, but, getting all the plumbing in, getting all the electrical in. It's up to the point of having all the electricals. So there's a lot of structure requirements, including electrical and plumbing. So I'm not, you're in the trades, Ed, but I would say it's more than a month to do all that. And by that time, the system's constructed and the control worked. So now we know if they keep moving on, they have a system that's constructed to meet the new plan.
So what you're looking for is that the farthest the builder could go would be to put in the rough?
Well, they could put in all the electrical,
Okay.
just not the wallboard.
No
So
wall.
not just the frame, but the electrical, the plumbing, it's close to just being sealed, the wall, plasterboard going up. That's what I meant.
Understand.
Madam Chair,
Yes, KG?
2 questions, in my mind, I should just want to open it up. One is that whatever we are getting the recommendation from you, if that is what we take it, is there an economic harm for the person who is constructing this site, the other one? If we take it, is there an advantage for him to wait and then less risk to do as we say? Is it?
I would think. Can I ask a question?
Yes, Ed?
The house that burned down, when was it built?
I have no idea.
It's pretty old. Does anybody know how old it was?
60s, I think,
In the
early
60s.
60s, I believe.
Yeah. I was just thinking that what if it's in your best interest to make sure that the soil perks properly and the groundwater isn't too high. Something built, who knows, it could have been way before the newer regulations. Get a house under that far into construction when
Well,
there's some
and
problem with
just
the
so you,
septic.
and if I may, that's why they can't even do that.
Oh, okay.
They have to have that septic plan approved before
That's
the
what I
building
thought.
permits are
Right.
approved.
Yeah.
So, they're already moving themselves into 6 to 10 weeks, I'll give an average.
Yeah.
So that's when the building permit can issue, is once we know there's a suitable approved septic plan,
Right.
which may come to the Board of Health, as you've seen others,
Right.
because they may need waivers, depending on water table and
Yeah.
what Ed mentioned.
If
If I
Madam
may.
Chair, if I may recall, there was a casual remark made in the Conservation Commission when I think they signed a paper off for this property, if I remember. Is that true?
I'm waiting for response from Paul, is it, one of your members, Paul?
Paul?
Yes,
Okay.
I'm just waiting for
So
response
if-
from him.
if that's what I connect with this property as the
Okay.
same
Yeah, it is that property,
then
yeah.
what I understand was there was a lot of elevation difference between the wetlands and this particular land, so the water table may not be an issue there to that extent.
It depends on if it's following grade, but you're right, it could, it may not, it depends on, typically water table will follow, typically, it's not always right where the wetlands are, it starts to rise up, but we'll find out when we test.
I mean, looking at the location where this is, I don't foresee a problem with that.
We
one.
had high water table right down the street where the wetlands were down the bottom at another property on Winter Street, about 5 houses down. But water table was very high up near the house too, at the higher elevation. It depends on how the water's flowing, the soil, the ledge and all that.
Mark, so would you propose that we table this for the time being?
I
until-
don't see the need to table the agreement, but if the attorney wishes not to have that in there, they can sit on it for a couple weeks and see what they wish to do. But I would suggest if they ask for us to approve it, I would just ask that that one condition be added to the agreement.
Clearly, we want to move forward with this.
That's,
and
well,
that's not.
I'm just giving an
what-
option.
I understand. No, this isn't that big a deal.
Okay.
We certainly want to move forward. We want to get the design done now and work with the board to move forward, so.
Okay.
Madam
whatever it is,
Chair?
it is.
Is the question of the trustworthiness of this developer, is that the bottom line question? I mean,
No, there's not, it's a protocol that we use for everyone.
protocol, but I've not
It's a
seen a
control.
protocol and.
It's a
um,
Procedure,
I'll
I'm
let you
sorry,
finish.
procedure. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
I'll let you finish. This is the board that establishes protocols and procedures. So if there is something that this board has determined in the past, and I don't know about it, and that you're implementing our procedures, or is this your procedure?
Well, may I say it's not my procedure?
Right.
But may I say there's gonna be many issues that you'll be learning about as a new board member that happened through many years. Mary is the elder here, as a respect to the time you've been on the board, but these are gonna come up, Judy, and unfortunately, it's not to hide anything. It's only to follow protocol, procedures, policies, whatever you wish to call them, that has been part of the process. I'll say part of the process for many years as controls. They probably, if we had to research it, we'd probably have to go back in time. It may be documented, it may not, but it's not something that just came out of nowhere without the discussion with the board. I've always worked with the board and I'll always be willing to work with the board. You are the authority that makes decisions. I understand my role and authority here. Thank you.
Just to, if I could address
Yes,
the board,
Judy.
my board members. I really question why we have policies and procedures or protocols that are not in writing and that are not able to be accessed and looked at by board members. Because if it's a verbal thing that's being passed down from year to year, I just feel that that's actually unfair to the citizens. So I would encourage us to make sure that we work on that to get better communication.
And Madam Chair, if I may, we are
Yes.
planning to. We've been very busy with tobacco control and trying to resolve recent issues. But we are planning to look at Title V. This is part of Title V and our local regulations. So we are planning to do that, and this would be the good year to do it. And usually, Charlie and Ed have been around prior to you two being here, but that had been discussed after we got through tobacco control and the pesticides. So next in line will be exactly what we're discussing tonight, including the local septic regulations that we have.
Madam Chair, I hate to beat this down, but, you know, I had asked the health agent, I don't know, 5 months ago for priorities, and I got health priorities, and I got administrative priorities. I'm not sure whose priorities we're talking about here, since this board has not talked about its priorities, and I believe that it's the board that should be setting priorities rather than, you know, as they say, the tail wagging the dog. So I'll leave it at for now.
And Madam Chair, I need to respond to that. Just, it's unfortunate that that's the mindset that's happening here.
Yes.
This board's the board that decided that we would do those regulations in that order, not me. It was this
When was
board with,
that?
but they take my advice too. So if I may add that they do take my advice, they hired me to take some advice. I'm here as your guide to protect you from liability. I'm here as your guide to help you with the state codes. I am your expert in respect to those areas. And, you know, anyone can be a board member, and it could be a poet, it could be a person playing a piano, it could be an expert scientist, it could be a pharmacist, it could be a nurse, it could be anyone. I'm here to guide you through all that. That's why I go to the conferences, I keep up my education, I'm a registered sanitarian, I have my master's in public health, environmental health concentration. I know I'm not here for a job interview, but I think it needs to be made clear that I'm here to help you. And I want the board to realize that, and I don't think this needs any further discussion at this time, because we still have an applicant waiting here.
Exactly.
Madam
this is the
Chair,
kind of
he
stuff
had
I
a
think is
long time
unfortunate.
to say things, so I think we should discuss this at another meeting.
Judith, I think
We
we're going
really
to,
should discuss this at
we are
another
going to
meeting.
just table
Thank
the
you.
discussion for now and deal with the
President.
proposition at hand.
Sorry.
I may add one sentence for this process. I think whatever process that needs to be done or planned on, we should be in line with what the town wants to do, is to develop economic benefit out of whatever is being done. So we shouldn't be unnecessarily burdening the citizens or the economic development from happening. So let's work with that goal, but still protect what we need to protect. Thank you.
It's not an unusual burden to put on anyone. It has been our position in the past to proceed this way. And until such time as the board examines the information and changes its position, this is the way it stands.
Thank you, Madam Chair. If I may, we still have the applicant here, so I would ask that this waiver, this agreement, I apologize, I've said waiver several times, this agreement be approved with the condition that the septic system, once it's approved, and that septic system be installed prior to rough electrical. And what I mean by that is all the electrical plumbing can be in. Maybe I can restate it to say prior to wall boarding.
Prior to
or
wall
plastering. Yes,
Wall
I would
boarding.
be glad to restate it that way. Thank you. I think we're all in, if the
Can I
board's
have-
in agreement, I'd ask that you vote.
Can I have a motion to that effect?
So move.
Second? All in favor?
I'd like to make a discussion point of order.
Abstention?
Discussion?
Objections? The motion is passed, Judith. I'm sorry. We'll discuss it at a later
I'm sorry,
meeting.
there was some point of order, there was no opportunity for discussion on the motion.
I asked for,
Sorry,
Information.
Madam Chair, I'm sorry that we have not voted on it, and if there is a need for discussion, that needs to happen.
we have discussed this for over half an hour. And
I agree.
the position of the
N- the-
board is that this is the
No.
past practice, and this is what will continue until we vote
Let-
to change it.
Let me.
And this is not the opportune
Let me
time
make
to
it
do
very
that.
clear, the original document has been amended just now, and based on that, we are trying to vote on it, and then if a member wants to address it and discuss it, we should have the opportunity for it.
Madam Chair, I have one short question, I think, for the applicant. May
Go
I
ahead.
address? I just wondered if what is being proposed is a problem for you, or if you believe that it's workable.
Frankly, I respect the board's position. I respect the concerns of the board that the work get done. And if it does cause any delay, it certainly shouldn't be a significant delay. So we'll work it through.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
So
our
can we
vote
take a
will
vote?
stand.
I did not have an opportunity to vote, point of order.
Please, I'm sorry.
All right, we will re-vote on this, accepting the agreement with the addendum as proposed. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention?
Through, what was the vote then? 3-0?
3-0.
No, I
No,
voted.
no.
You did not
No,
abstain?
no.
I voted.
I had not, I was thinking because there was no words put in the, with the, typically when one makes a motion, they say the words of what the motion is, so I hesitated, but I am going to agree.
Okay, so 4, 5, excellent.
Yes, I voted.
All right.
Excellent, thank you. I couldn't hear, I apologize.
Thank you all very much.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
Mark, I'll get you a
Yeah,
recap.
we'll be glad to talk again. I'm gonna move that soil testing along as quick as possible.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
So the next thing on our agenda would be the Water Policy Committee.
Yes, I think they're here. They can come forward if they'd like, and we do have a sign-up sheet if you haven't signed it. And, come on down, you probably, if, Madam Chair, if you don't mind, I think it's easier to hear them. As
Yeah.
I just noted, I
Come
have
on
trouble
down.
hearing.
Would we have them seated in front,
Yeah,
if
I
you
would
don't
say,
mind?
most of the time you sit right at the table with us, so if that's okay with the
That's
chair.
fine.
Will the audio be?
We can turn the mic around.
We can
so-
turn these around, oh, if you wanna speak through that, it's up to how you want
Either way.
it. Okay. You're here tonight, Wayne.
Yes, I made it. Hi, Wayne Bates, Chairman of the Water Policy Committee. We wanted to come before the Board of Health as an opportunity to share with you our efforts in water conservation, primarily from proposed changes that we have to the water conservation regulations that Jeff LeMay of our committee will share with you. And then also, maybe after Jeff presents our proposed changes, we'd like to talk to you about your jurisdiction of wells and water wells and what we are proposing to work with you on modifying those regulations along to match the water conservation. So I'll let Jeff go over the changes, give you an overview of what we're going to propose to present at town meeting in May for proposed changes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Wayne.
That's all right.
We can share, thanks, I can, thank you.
So,
I don't want them to know.
the document that the board members have in front of them is a document that I've been working on for some time. I've had plenty of help from my committee members on the Water Policy Committee, and members who are actually no longer on our committee. But what we're trying to do is go through the bylaws to try and make them more fair to everybody, more equitable, while trying to be more proactive with our water conservation in town. You know, I'll just go through some of the subsections and try and let you guys know what's the spirit of the changes that we're trying to make here. In our purpose, we've added some language, again, to let the reader, let the citizen know that we're trying to be more equitable with our water policy, and we're trying to be more proactive in how we conserve our municipal water supply. In our definition subsection, we've added some definitions to make it a little bit more clear about what the different types of outdoor watering, what these mean, whether it's a handheld or unattended. We've added some definition about what an irrigation system is, what we believe an irrigation system to be, and what runoff would be. Again, that's in an effort to make this whole chapter of our town's bylaws more clear to everybody. Moving into subsection 5, restricted water uses. Really trying to just simplify what's going on here, especially in the permanent outdoor water restrictions. I think it was, the old way we had the restrictions documented was a paragraph trying to describe when particular addresses could water and at what times and whatnot. I think, in my talks with folks, a lot of people found that to be a little bit confusing and weren't really sure when they could or when they couldn't. So we just tried to simplify it by putting a table there instead of a paragraph. If you have this address, you can water on Wednesday between 7 p.m. and 7 a.m. on Thursday. We've added some restrictions about runoff there too. The next section here on page 3 is about our conditional outdoor water restrictions. So those go into place when the levels of the Hopkinton Reservoir fall to certain levels. And what we've tried to do here, I don't think we've really changed much of the spirit of what's going on here, but just try and make it more consistent with the definitions that we've added and some of the terminology that we're using, like unattended watering, handheld watering, and whatnot. But I don't think the spirit of what we're restricting here is really changing. Moving on to page 4 here, we've
we wanted to make some changes in the penalties. We've had plenty of discussions about this amongst our committee members. We've talked to Sustainability Committee about it, and you know, one thing that I think we've all agreed on is that $200 per fine, starting on the first fine, is what our policy is right now. That can be overly restrictive, because not all violations of this policy should be treated equally. Someone filling up a kiddie pool for their grandkid on a hot summer day shouldn't be treated as someone, you know, watering their lawn in the middle of a rainstorm when we're in a stage 2 restriction. So I think what we're trying to do here is address that, you know, some of these violations shouldn't all be treated the same. I think there's still some room for improvement there before we get to Maytown meeting. Exemptions, subsection 10 here. Again, I don't think we're really trying to change the spirit of what's going on. We're just trying to make it more consistent with our new definitions, and make things consistent between a homeowner and businesses and the town itself, you know, town ball fields and whatnot. You know, before we had all sorts of, well, if you're the town watering a baseball field, you can do this, and if you're a resident, you can water at this time. And I think what we're trying to move to is Ashland waters between these hours on these days. And we've got some exemptions here where people can, people or the town itself can apply for exemptions to that, like Title V situations, like we were just talking about a few minutes ago. And other new lawns, if a house is being constructed and a new lawn needs to be put in, the builder or the homeowner can apply for a permit to install a lawn. And the other one that we just talked about at our last meeting was for municipal projects. Like the one specifically that came up was the House Street Solar that people have been talking about. You know, the town is looking, you know, to do some landscaping as part of that project if it ends up going through, and it would be a shame that our water policy would restrict some of that landscaping from happening, where the town has made a commitment to the people on House Street. So what we wanted to do was add some language there to allow the town to apply for a permit exemption as well. We've also added a subsection here in the proposal for irrigation systems. We've already got language in our bylaw about the equipment that existing systems need to have, as far as backflow prevention and precipitation monitoring and things like that. So that will all stay there, but what we're proposing is to allow new irrigation systems to come online, but those new irrigation systems would have to meet those restrictions as well, and some others. That's a summary of what we've got proposed so far.
And also, primarily that's with those regulations are enforced by the Department of Public Works. So any of the irrigation issues, I think the one that affects the Board of Health is the exemption for Title V situations where somebody needs to do an emergency repair and needs to establish a lawn in the middle of a stage 1 or stage 2. So that's in here, and you know, you take a look at it, and if you have any comments, we'd like to hear the comments. We're going to be scheduling some public forums to talk about this, and as well as the MWRA connection. One of the other things we wanted to talk about tonight in Sustainability Committee, I'm also a member of that committee, that Trish Kendall chairs, and she's here, and Matt and Dan. So one of the things we wanted to bring forth is, you know, when we went about with the irrigation systems, prohibiting new irrigation systems from being installed, the loophole was that somebody could install a private well to serve as an irrigation well, and that's under your jurisdiction as the Board of Health. So a couple of things that we wanted to propose to you, and we don't have them in a formal document, and I apologize for that tonight, but we do have some comments on the Board of Health regulations on Chapter 312, water supplies, where I don't know if you have a copy of. And not to go through that chapter in great detail, but one of the things we want to try to do in working with the Board of Health is to close up that loophole. So one of the things, if you just kind of picture the way we, where we get our water is from the wells on Howe Street. So if somebody installs a private well, then that could impact our DPW's ability to withdraw water from that aquifer. So what we want to try to do is work with the Board of Health to tighten up those regulations that say, if potable water is available and we're now proposing to lift the prohibition on irrigation systems, that we want to tighten up the regulations on irrigation wells so that somebody can't just go in and install or advance a well for irrigation and kind of slip through the cracks as far as, and I believe if you look at your regulation there, you have the authority, it's written in the regulation now to pay attention to that and to prohibit that under your section of prohibitions. But we'll get you some comments on that. But we wanted to start the dialogue now to say, let's look at this together from a sustainability, from a water conservation standpoint to make sure that we're protecting our resources, collectively protecting our resources. So, a couple of those things would be, in looking at those regulations, is to define potable and non-potable uses of groundwater from a well, as well as, I know another issue that we'd like to address is as far as the prohibition in your regulations on cisterns. So we want to try to look at, and I know, and Sustainability Committee can talk about it too, but we want to look at how can we do rainwater collection systems for irrigation that aren't prohibited by the Board of Health. And obviously do them in a way that protects public health, to prevent cross connections to the municipal potable water supply and all, but to allow citizens an opportunity to collect rainwater to irrigate without having to use our resource from a groundwater standpoint, or if we tie into the MWRA, to use MWRA water for those purposes. So again, feel free to ask any of us any questions. We just wanted to start the dialogue now so that when we're all present at, in May for town meeting, we're all kind of educated on what we're trying to accomplish as a community on these issues. So.
Comments, Mark?
I have spoken, we had a speaker prior, Joel was here speaking earlier on behalf of these same ideas. Previously, I guess about 6 months ago, Joel, and then tonight. The one issue that we're trying to find out is if it can be held up legally. I've spoken to Dave Manoogian about this, and that was recently. The problem I have is I can't find another town or city in Massachusetts that has been able to adopt these regulations and to have them stay in place. So if you can help me find regulations within the Commonwealth, that would be helpful.
Are you referring to the cisterns?
No, the irrigation wells not being allowed to be used.
Well, you already, in your regulation, you already have language that allows you to, prohibits the use of a well for non-potable purposes such as heat sinks and the like, and to...
But if I may, without Board of Health approval. So we have someone coming up at 8:30 that will be asking for 2 irrigation wells, and what the board usually looks at is what issues would they be causing. So to prohibit irrigation wells could be a legal challenge.
Well, I'm just saying, an irrigation well very well may be acceptable to the community. I'm just saying, base it on science, not on opinion. So if you have somebody applying for an irrigation well that's impacting the rest of the community's ability to withdraw water and have access to water, that's something that the community as a whole should really pay attention to. So you need to know where that well is, how much they're planning on drawing, where they are in zone 1, zone 2, drawdown, and I think if I've read your regulations correctly, you have the ability to require the applicant to provide that information.
We actually have that information because our wells are at the Hopkinton Reservoir, and the zone of contribution is very limited up in that area. So most people, there's no houses up in that area, so we don't get requests from that area.
Do you know what the Zone 1 and Zone 2 delineation
We
are?
have those in our office, yes. And
Okay,
they're
so
right-
that's what you
they're
should
right
overlay
around-
that from the
yeah.
GIS maps.
They're
and-
not big. Unfortunately, because we draw indirectly off the Hopkinton Reservoir, they're basically across the street. So it's very limited, unfortunately, and they're on our Title V maps. We've had this discussion with Joel. Maybe new maps will come out, but that scientific proof is difficult to connect when that's where
Well,
ours.
they're available on the state's.
Yep,
If you,
yes, yes.
the DEP came in and spoke to us, and they showed us the, the swimming maps and all. So you have access to available information from a withdrawal standpoint. So again, I'm strongly encouraging the Board of Health to look at it from a community-wide standpoint. I know I respect your need to protect public health, but if somebody's withdrawing water from, an area that the town is withdrawing water from, and they're kind of slipping through a loophole, then, that impacts us all. So, I would just ask the Board of Health to look at that, and personally, I think in that regulation, the Department of Public Works should be involved in the review of that application for an irrigation well. I mean, those are recommendations we'll put forth before the Board of Health more formally for this particular regulation, but, the Department of Public Works has, a very significant responsibility of ensuring that the entire community has access to water. So, we're all concerned about water, and we all want to make sure that we're protecting our resource. And, I don't know anything about the application that's before you tonight and what it's for and all, but you can imagine, if somebody abuses that access to water, that will impact us all, so.
Madam Chair,
Ms. Gagey.
there was a memo sent from the town of Ashland. I think I just got a copy of an old memo that was sent declaring that there is a shortage in the amount of water in the town, and was possibly planning to hook up to Southborough MWRA station there. So if that's being the case, they say that if the resources are being drawn out, so the shortage is going to accelerate further down to make it more positive for us for water. So shouldn't we think about how to regulate this irrigation wells or other things that we are using it for more carefully than just running through it and then sanctioning it easily?
Madam Chair, if I may on that, that's a
Yes.
very good comment, and we do look at that. As I noted just earlier, the scientific needs are there, and you have to have the scientific proof. Unfortunately, our maps show that our zone of contribution for our public water supply is very limited to the end of Howe Street, and that's it. So we can't prove there's withdrawal from our water system with the maps that we have. If it did, then this board by all means should consider weighing that out, and I agree with the Water Quality Committee as well. But whenever we adopt regulations, you have to make sure they meet scientific principle.
Right.
And that's one of them is
Based
the
on
aquifer.
based on the remarks here, why is that the town is not thinking to dig more wells in different places so that we could use those aquifers to supply rather than depleting in one place and then drawing water from MWRA?
So,
We do have a well up
If
on
it's a different aquifer, then why not the town dig a well for town's use?
So there, I don't want to,
No,
through
go ahead.
the chair, the town has evaluated that. As far as former wells on Spring Street, as well as over on Shore Road. And there's been an engineering study on those wells and the quality of water, the ability to bring that water into the system, cost comparisons of that compared to MWRA connection. The water over on Shore Road is high in manganese and iron, which would have to be sent all the way across town to Howe Street to be treated. The water on Spring Street has issues related to not only access to the wells, but also potential contaminants from the former quarry operations. Both are possibilities, given time and money, both could possibly be done.
Are these two independent sources that we have?
They are, yeah.
That's,
Yep.
that's.
Yeah, but
that's delineated and that's made sure that it's different sources, they're not connected.
They are,
The two are professional.
sure, yes, they're not connected actually, because Spring Street's in a different aquifer that's fed by the Ashland Reservoir subcatchment area, and Shore Road is over by Washacum, which is a different catchment area. So they're not connected hydraulically to the Howe Street. I just want to point out, and I just encourage you to read the regulation as far as, and I'll read it for you under prohibitions. Wells used for drinking water and domestic water supply shall not be used to provide water for groundwater heat pump systems, for cooling or air conditioning systems, or irrigation. That's under your prohibitions. Any well used for such systems shall be approved by the Ashland Board of Health only after the applicant has submitted with sufficient evidence to the satisfaction of the Board of Health that such use will not disrupt any quantity of water from any nearby well, and that the well will satisfy the manufacturer's recommendations for proper equipment operation. So part of our recommendations, that you have that authority right now. So part of our recommendations is also that the DPW get involved in that review process to make sure it's not going to impact water quantity or quality town-wide. But you have that authority now to make sure that evidence is provided that it's not going to impact any other wells in town.
Thank you.
Just, Madam Chair, if I may, oh, sorry.
I just had one question about cisterns. Why is it because of vector transmission, breeding?
I believe so.
Okay.
I just want to let everyone know, we do have a representative here from the Department of Public Works, so Regita's here. If you wanted to hear from her, she's available. I don't know, Regita, if you had anything to say, but I saw Kathy at the podium first, though, so.
I completely agree where Wayne's standing. Right now, we have a question on, while we are progressing towards the MWRA connection and holding public meetings, we constantly get questions on, well, we have all these conservation measures. As soon as you reach stage 1 or as soon as you reach stage 2, you have these restrictions that you cannot water the lawn at such and such time. And whereas all these private well owners just dig up a well and use irrigation water to, and even if the irrigation well is in that same aquifer as where the Howe Street treatment plant wells are set up. We get constantly all kinds of questions, and we are trying to keep this as open as possible to the public and keep it as fair and as equitable as possible to the entire town. And that's where all of this comes in.
So I just wanted to add to Wayne's comments that one of the things that was explained to us, we had 2 different meetings with DEP explaining how the aquifers work and how the MWRA hookups would work and all the various pieces and parts that go into that. And one of the things they impressed on us is the new swimming regulations refer to different basin areas. And the entirety of our town is in the same basin area. So they're looking at basins in terms of withdrawals. And partly why we have issues, besides the ones that Wayne already brought up about additional wells, is we would be adding more withdrawals into this town, and we're putting no water back. And until we get a sewer treatment plant in town, we are not going to be adding water back into our basin. So every single straw, or well, if you will, that we put down into the aquifer or the basin bowl is sipping water out. And in our view, and in sustainability's committee view, what we're trying to do is make prohibitions for irrigation systems fair. You know, we either apply them across the board, no irrigation systems at all, but then they get people grandfathered in. And in some cases, we've had people moving across town to get at a system that's grandfathered in, or they discover they've moved across town and they don't have a system, they can't put one in. So what we're trying to say is, if we're going to allow for irrigation systems, which seems to be fair because that's how people value property in our United States right now, is that we need to be knowing how much water they're using and then getting everybody to stick within the cap for all their water use that the state is asking us to do. which is 65 gallons per day per person. So, you know, that's why. And right now, Roy, who runs the water plant, knows when people are drawing down irrigation, and in some cases, when there's more irrigation happening, then they can capture that information right now, because that's when our wells start to run dry, when we're, you know, reaching water crisis points. So the other things, I know it got mentioned earlier, is we're actually working on notifying people sooner about some of the, when the bans are coming on board, and when we're getting close to like having to institute a ban so people can start paying more attention sooner. Thank you.
I'm not sure if anyone can answer this question, you may not have the data, but has anybody thought about a graph on population increases in the town and future water decrease of water deficiencies? And have you, and if, you know, I know that a lot of this is weather dependent, it may not be something that can be computed, but have you thought about that? This has to do with the MWRA hookup.
We have Department of Conservation Resources, DCR forecasts on population growth as well as estimated usage of water on a million gallon per day basis for the whole town. And that's publicly available. I have it at mwra.ashlandmass.com in that website.
Do you happen to know off the top of your head what the cutoff number in population of this town would be?
Current population is around 17,000.
And how many more people could we add to the town before we run out of water?
That's not the way it's forecasted.
I know,
It's
it's all right.
forecasted every 5 years based on economic growth and various other factors for the town population and historic growth in the past decades. And DCR has a certain formula which they use to give that information to every town, and we get that information from them.
And the follow-up question, this is my last question, is are there any known legal methods to have should we run into a water crisis, short of hooking up to another supply like the MWRA, is there any known legal basis for having a building moratorium due to a water deficiency in the town? Because if you can't provide your new construction with water, then does anyone know, because I seem to, in my memory bank, have something back in the 80s where there was, wasn't there? Where there was some discussion of this, and I didn't know if it was in law or if it had ever been done, or if it had been done away with. Because it seems that, you know, water shortages is a critical factor in quality of life, and if a community could maintain, we have such a good water system, actually. We have really good water here. And I understand what you're saying, if you get a certain point where it gets diminished, you run into the risk of a diminution in quality as well as quantity, especially with all the irrigations and lawns and things and chemicals that go into, perhaps, into some aquifers and through runoff. So I just wondered, have you heard of anything like that?
I haven't heard anything,
No?
any
Okay.
sort of moratorium, but I can look up and get back to you on that.
We're fortunate to have, I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman.
Chairman,
Mike?
Would you share that website again, MWRA?
It's mwra.ashlandmass.com.
Oh, okay, thank you.
So, Michael Herbert, Town Manager. I don't recall a water moratorium per se, but we did have a sewer moratorium actually not that long ago, I would say 10 years ago. And the reason that the moratorium was put on was that the concern was that if there was new building that was occurring that was putting too much pressure on the sewer lines, that you would have breaks everywhere. So, you know, if you don't have the pipes that can handle the capacity with new development coming on, you know, unless you do the work you need to do to replace that system, you can't, it can't handle it. So we've tried to take efforts to do that, and the moratorium was lifted, I'd say a couple years ago, but it's something that I'm currently looking at putting back in place, at least until some of the work has been done.
And Madam Chair, if I may? Oh,
Yes.
sorry. Just historical. I'm gonna be known as the historian if this keeps up, right? Maybe I best be quiet. But anyways, historically, back in 1988 and 1989, Euphemia Road and Grover Road will be two of your good examples, in Boulder Hill and Indian Brook. All those were being built at the same time, and we started having a water moratorium, then a sewer moratorium. I believe the water moratorium went away as quicker than the sewer, but it was right at the height of all the development. And I'll never forget all the septic applications coming in and the well permits. So you will find sprinkled between those subdivisions, wells, septic systems with availability to sewer and water, because they put the lines in, but they were dry. Well, they weren't able to be used, so they call them dry lines. But then as soon as they got it back, a lot of it was inflow infiltration as it relates to sewer. And water, I'd have to go back and look at why they gave us a water moratorium. It could have been the same thing, but I do remember that was the error, to help out with the question you had. If I, and Madam Chair, if I may, we do have it might be a perfect time, because we have the Water Policy Committee here. We do have the applicants here for the lanterns at Warren Woods, and they are here. Now they may not be as prepared, but they are here to present their irrigation wells to the board. So if I may, if the Water Policy Committee doesn't mind, you could listen in as we
Madam
go
Chair, I have
through.
one
I'm sorry,
comment
that's-
to make. I'm
sorry.
sorry, Andres.
Yes, KG.
Looking at the way that the presentation has been made, I infer that some lawns are good because we have had the irrigation available through other means, and those property values go up, and the others get depleted. And it also affects the tax collection here, and then probably affects the overall budget problems too. So we need to look at that aspect of it also when you consider the new policies on any of these water irrigations.
Okay.
Madam Chairman, Chairwoman, I wanted to just address one of the questions that was brought up a moment ago. The question was basically, when are we going to run out of water? You know, and DEP actually, our permits limit how much water we're allowed to extract on a daily basis over, you know, a yearly average. And part of that water that we extract, we share with Hopkinton, but you know, there is a limit to that. And I've looked at, you know, how our water usage has been moving over the past 6 or 7 years, and we are going to hit that limit where our population growth, if we just keep using the same amount of water per capita, we are going to hit that number. You know, at some point, it's not I don't know the exact number. I'm hesitant to give an estimate in case I'm off, but it's not 100 years away. It's on the order of you know, probably around 30 or so. So we need to do something in town to address our water supply shortage.
Thank you. Lantern at Warren Woods. Come on down.
Do you have a plan you'd like to put out for the, oh, actually, hold on, the board has a plan each.
Yes. Yeah,
We copied it.
we do.
Go ahead, you may want to introduce yourself.
My name is Greg Howell. I work for the Green Company. I work on a lot of their landscaping, irrigation type issues at one of our other developments in Plymouth. And I'll be working at the Lanterns at Warren Woods when we do start activity out there. And just looking for approval on 2 irrigation wells. I have Ryder Bomagen with me from Mars Services, who would be
my responsibility would be to set the wells and do the pump test and do the water quality.
Okay. We did submit application to Mr. Oram last week, along with a stamped engineering plan from VHB for showing the location of the 2 proposed wells with 100 and 125 foot perimeter around each well location, showing that it is not within 100 or 125 feet of a subsurface leaching field.
Madam Chair, if I may, we just heard from the Water Policy Committee and the applicant. I know they're not within the zone of contribution for the wells that are located at Hopkinton Reservoir. We have heard, though, that there's some concerns that may be a need to be addressed related to the basin. So I think what would be appropriate is that the engineer note if this is indeed affecting any wells within the area by noting if it's within any aquifer zones, a zone of contributions for other wells, such as the public and private wells. That would be your responsibility to do that. So I would recommend that to the board. If they can do that and sign it off by the engineer, then it either can be brought back or I can approve it. I'll leave that up to the board.
Okay.
Can I have a question
Yes, KG?
addressed? These are irrigation wells, I presume, is that right?
That's correct.
And is there any restriction from using the water that's there in the stormwater basin that you have for irrigation?
Restriction on using?
The collected water that you have around in these stormwater basins that you can put a pump and clean it up and use it for your lawn?
I'm not sure. We are gonna collect the surface water, or at least direct the surface water to a drainage management area that will be built on site.
Yeah. I know
yeah.
this has come up before the Conservation Commission. I've been there, I know that.
Yeah.
So my question is that water usable for irrigation in one form or the other form? And if that is the case, then would you need these irrigation wells?
My answer would be that, we did look at the rainwater harvesting programs that various companies do offer. And to be, what we found was that it just wouldn't generate enough sustainable water for usage.
Right, but you have 2 wells. Maybe you can compromise to one and take the rest from the other. Is that good enough quantity?
I'm sorry, what was the second part?
You could use the water and then remaining you can dig 1 well and take it rather than both wells. Is that possible?
Yeah, we, our hope was that we would only need actually the 1 well, but we're the thought that we weren't gonna have enough water in 1 well to service the site, so the second well was proposed, if that's your question.
These are gonna be deep bedrock wells. We don't know what we're gonna end up for a yield until we drill the wells.
Yes.
May I ask a question? Just out of curiosity, if there wasn't a ban on irrigation connections to the water system, would you be installing wells, or would you be connecting to the potable water supply for irrigation?
I can't really answer that. Kind of a developer question above my pay grade. I'm just trying to submit for the application for the irrigation well.
So I would just ask the board, to refer to your regulations as far as sufficient evidence that we are considering, lifting the ban we've put. So if we backtrack a little bit, the Sustainability Committee, when we put forth on town floor to ban new irrigation wells, it was a phased approach to getting control of water conservation in town. So we have made a number of efforts to conserve. We feel that what we're doing now is putting some, and we're intending to lift the ban on irrigation wells, having all wells be, not irrigation wells, but connections, irrigation systems to the potable water supply, with rain meters, with timers, with meters, et cetera, in our regulations. So if the ban was lifted on connecting to the potable water supply, I guess, would that change the applicant's position on installing, advancing 2 deep bedrock wells for irrigation? And I think the member of the board brings up an excellent point as far as using rainwater. Like, there's a lot of systems out there now that allow that to happen, whether or not the developer is aware of them or has used them before. I think it's something that should be considered before advancing a well.
Yeah, besides this, the Water Policy Committee is recommending the irrigation be allowed. So then the need for the well may be obsolete at that stage, as well as their expense may be saved now. So they may want to rethink about it if they look at that aspect of it.
Hey, Madam Chairman, can I put a point of order?
But Mark, you have to, can't hear, the audience can't hear you. The listening audience. The listening audience can't hear you on TV.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
Yes, Mark.
My name's Mark Sodi. Now, the water policy, this is point of order, agenda order I'm going by. The water policy did have their time to speak, and now we got the Latins of Warren Woods here. They're talking now regulation, but talking their regulations, are they issued already, or are they coming to the board for the first time?
Madam Chair, if I may, the Water Policy Committee is coming to our board for the first time, but I can add that they've been transferring information to us through the Department of Public Works. So I have been consulting with David Menugian and Regina. We may have spoken a few times too. So it's not the first I've heard of it, but it's the first time I've seen the proposal for the regulation changes. But I've heard of bits and pieces through the way, but not I haven't seen the proposal.
Okay.
So,
And if I may, that I'm sure their goal is to have the property in good condition, and our goal is to make sure that their property is also well valued, as well as the water is saved enough for everybody else. That's what we're looking at it. It's nothing imposing somebody to give up their property value at all.
Yeah, in terms of what the irrigation system itself that's laid out in the community, we'll certainly use, today's technologies, smart water controllers, things like that, precipitation, the evapotranspiration meters, precipitation, rain gauges and things like that, which are almost a standard in today's technology with what's put in the ground. We do have other properties that we've developed around Massachusetts over the last 10 years that really, as some of these regulations are becoming stronger and stronger, we've adapted to them in what we put in the ground for irrigation. We have strict water restrictions at one of our sites, and we have a specific amount of water that we have to use or use under each year, and we do adhere to those set requirements. We have frequent training sessions for all of our installers and managers of underground irrigation systems that take part in those training sessions. So I'm happy to say that everyone that does work on our irrigation systems are well trained and knowledgeable in the regulations. And I don't see that being any different in this location as well.
Ed?
Ma'am, no, go ahead.
You may not be able to answer this, but do you have any idea of how much, knowing the number of units that are planned for this, for Lampson's, do you have any idea as to how much water you might be taking out with these irrigation wells in order to supply the needs of this community?
I think it depends on what the wells can distribute first. But if they were good wells, we would, on a yearly basis, is that what you're asking? Yeah. On a yearly basis, I would guess somewhere in the 1.5 million to 2 million gallons a year, somewhere in there, depending on what type of weather too. We have a rainy year, certainly less. A dry year, maybe on the higher side of that threshold.
Just two other comments. There's something that KG mentioned. I saw in Florida, and they did a very good job. They retain water from rain because it's a slightly different type of method of building. But and this is just my personal comment. Green is an excellent company. I'm very impressed with everything that you've done in the past, and that's why I'm pretty sure that. And this is a good question for you. I'm glad the landscape architect came, because I have a feeling.
Not the architect.
Oh, you're not the architect? No. Oh, okay.
No.
The landscape.
If anybody's got an architecture or an engineering degree, it's this guy, and that's why I brought him.
I think in the future, there's going to be a trend towards different types of lawns, in my opinion, instead of monocultures, because they take a tremendous amount of chemical need and constant care. Bluegrass and some of the grasses that they use are perhaps the weakest plants in the face of the earth. They need constant human care just to keep them alive, and they use a tremendous amount of water. And it's not, even though New England has a lot of water, we don't have the water problems that you say in California and Arizona and New Mexico. But nevertheless, I think people are becoming more aware of that. But there are other landscaping methods and designs that don't require as much irrigation, because there's plants that look good and require no upkeep hardly. And I wondered if that's something that you guys are looking forward to looking at in the future.
I do have a turf degree, though.
Okay.
I was waiting for that actually to become relevant, and this is my moment. Mom and Dad, I did all right with my turf degree, but no. Yes, we are going to use drought-resistant species. Yes. We have been working with our landscape architect to design the landscaping around the, if you look at the site plan, it's almost six-pack pods.
Yep.
The landscaping around the six-pack pods, and in the back of these pod areas, between the pod areas, is gonna be what we're kinda calling as a meadow grass, but it's gonna be a blend of fescue grasses, which, as you know, are pretty low water tolerant grasses.
Right, right.
And I would say more than half of the turf area is gonna be covered with fescue grasses.
That's good.
Madam Chair.
Yeah,
Yes,
and,
David.
I would say there's gonna be some other, perennial type plants and things
Yeah.
like that that will work in, that are all native species that will adapt quite well in arid conditions. Yeah.
I
Yes,
really
KJ.
I echo your statement about Green Company because I've seen them more often in the Conservation Commission. They've been very cooperative in working with the town. What I request is to see whether these detention basins or basins where you're storing rainwater, if that can be utilized, and if you can make a calculation out of it and see whether there's a need for the well or not, that will be very helpful.
Yes.
I think this is a great opportunity I don't even know about your development at all. I don't know what it looks like, honestly, and so I come with no agenda I didn't even know they were on the agenda. But I think this is a perfect opportunity to work with a developer who, and I don't know the developer, but based on your testimonies, they're a high-quality firm. I think this is a perfect opportunity to work with sustainability, water policy. We're talking in January. Nobody's going to be irrigating for the next few months, right? So I think this is a perfect opportunity to work together with a few committees in town that have a vested interest in how we move forward on some of these type of projects. And believe me, I'm not trying to start, I'm speaking for myself. I'm a registered professional engineer in 5 states, and I understand a developer's challenges. Don't get me wrong. We want to make sure that we're preserving our resource, and that resource is water. We want to make sure that the developer gets what they need. Maybe it looks a little differently than they have on the landscape architectural plans now after we talk about different species, which I'm not. I don't have a turf degree. So, and I know Kathy Rooney has a lot of experience and landscape experience on these areas. So, like, if we have an opportunity to work together between the Sustainability Committee, Water Policy Committee, I think this is a perfect opportunity to demonstrate to the community, this is what these are the open discussions that we need to have about water, the use of water, and how we preserve it and conserve it. So, I'll stop now and leave it to you to make your decision, but I just wanted to add.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Joel Arbeitman. I just want to raise one other point. We've heard a lot of discussion about the town wells and not having them really connect through their aquifer system to most of the rest of the town. And I want to say that I think that's a very short-sighted standard. What I believe the standard should be, I was at the Water Policy Committee meeting on this past Thursday night, and the director of the Department of Public Works, and Regita was there as well, she can confirm this, said that if we do a thorough job, doing the very best we can with the many things he's trying to implement to recharge the town's groundwater globally, the whole town, this would include a wastewater treatment plant, looking at impervious surfaces and so on, that we might, no guarantees, we might be able to take a fresh look. This could be 20 or 30 years from now, at Spring Street. We might, I'm going to say, he didn't say, we might be able, if we do a good job boosting our water table in town through limiting water usage and understanding the connectivity of wells, not just to where our town water comes from today, but to not destroy the potential to site wells elsewhere. That's really the issue to me. That's the long-sighted view. That's the understanding what sustainability is. You don't just look at today's mechanical, scientific mapping that you have. You say, you know what? We're gonna close out. You know, so the question for, and I don't mean to, you know, it's not this particular well or any particular well, but if this well is proximate to an aquifer that feeds Spring Street, or maybe because there's open space right nearby, I won't mention any names, but the area of this particular project has quite a bit of open space. The Warren Conference Center is one. I mean, granted, it's private property, but, you know, they've been very amenable to work with the town and try to look forward to what benefits, mutual benefit, that perhaps these wells might have an aquifer because it's so proximate right there that this would start to preclude the potential for other sightings in the future that the town is very likely to desperately need, even if we hook up to the MWRA. I think we've got to find every drop of water we possibly can. You know, that's taking the long view. So thank you.
Thank you. Mark, comment?
No, I think this is something that needs to be continued back to the, as it relates to what the Water Policy Committee has brought to our attention. We're doing two things at once here, but also we have an applicant here that's looking to see if the board is willing to approve their irrigation well or wells. From the discussion, I would suggest that the applicant come back, one, with the owner to give us the answers to the questions that were raised, because I understand that, I don't blame you one bit, Greg, that you don't want to answer for the owner. But as relates to the use of stormwater, that may be possible. Reducing the well maybe, as well as making sure the engineer addresses any aquifer issues, as noted from the policy committee. I'd suggest that it be tabled until our next meeting, which will be the second Tuesday in February, only because it's just too many open ends. To recommend it with conditions would just lead you back to here anyways. That would be my recommendation to the board.
Okay. Can I have a
Motion to continue? To?
motion to table it until our next meeting?
Yeah.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
So it's 5-0.
Madam Chair, if I may?
Yes.
We're limited on time. We have this meeting was posted from 7 to 9:30. We have approximately
Are the doors
25 minutes, so I will do the best I can to get through my agenda.
Yep.
The budget, we have the town manager here, as he so noted. I would like to go over the budget as well as any other pending items as quickly as I can.
Okay. Michael, do you want to discuss the budget with Mark?
Yeah, just,
With us?
I figured this would be a good time to bring up, it's under review is our budget for FY17. We are meeting with Michael as well as our manager, Nat Strasberg, and our town accountant on Thursday to give our goals, as well as the board's goals, and proposed budget has been presented back, I believe it was November, at our previous meeting, but some of those, I don't know if I have an extra copy for Mike. Yes, I do, Mike, if you'd like, I can show you. You've seen it probably, but the FY17 projections.
I will, just to
Okay.
kind of give you a heads up.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, it's okay, you're fine, it's okay. So, just to give you a heads up on just the process in general, is all of the department budgets are due January 29th. We're a little bit behind schedule than we usually are the past couple of years. We're following the same process as we have in each of the last 2 years. Departments are supposed to come up with their goals and objectives and start to define, you know, some measurable outcomes, if you will, related to their activities, and we'll put a funding request, put together a funding request that reflects that, and we'll do what we can to fund it. We've been successful in the last couple of years of making some strides with the Board of Health, and in terms of adding some services, we've done some of that on budget, we've done some of it off budget. We finally have money in there for a public health nurse. I think we're still defining what that role is, and we're still looking at some regional, I'm stealing all your thunder, aren't I, Mark?
No, go ahead, Mike.
I am. I swore I wouldn't do that.
No, it's okay.
But, so we've been able to do that. We've been able to add Sharps collection, and that was actually off budget through a renegotiated contract. But one thing I have expressed to Mark, and I think I've expressed this to several members, is I'd love to see the Board of Health. Obviously, you're an autonomous board. You act, you know, within your own authority and under your own authority. I'd love to see the Board of Health start taking on some more of the public health challenges in town, and not
not necessarily focus a lot on the regulatory issues. I know that that takes up a lot of time, and that's something that you have to do. But I'd love to see if you could, hopefully find a way to start addressing some of our more epidemic or pandemic issues, or those that are starting to get to that level. And I'm going to probably be restructuring our social service programs to hopefully start addressing some of that, and I'd love the Board of Health to be a part of that as well. So, Mark's got plenty of other stuff to talk about.
Well, you lead me right into the public health nurse, and we appreciate what you did back 2 years ago. Unfortunately, we did have a nurse through the last fiscal year, but came up to this next fiscal year, 16, and it's a 5 to 8 hour position depending. She found other employment, and she's staying on for our emergencies, but there's so much we can do, and I gave just an overview of our 2014 information on what we can do with the public health nurse, and I think some of those definitely will involve working, as we said, with the elderly service, Homeland Security, schools, epidemics, pandemics, communicable disease reporting is part of it. We are right now trying, as we were prior to having this nurse, doing the best we can with what we have, but we definitely are producing what I believe would be an appropriate public health program as it relates to what our public health nurse could do. So Homeland Security, we do address epidemics and pandemics to some degree. I was planning to get our public health nurse more involved, but she left before that time. Hopefully we'll have an intern, and we can maybe work towards a project with the public health nurse on some of those goals that you're suggesting. But the public health nurse, I hope that line stays in place. It's budgeted for $10,000. It's a position that exists. Obviously, there's a lot of money in that line item because we're just basically without as the time is going on. But I don't have any problem with your opportunity. What's that? Sorry, I'll
Question,
stop.
Madam. Why is that we are not making an effort to get the public nurse, if that is essential and critical?
Yeah, if
Is
I
that-
may, Madam Chair?
Is that put on a back burner, or is that still actively looking for one?
We are actively looking. I think what happened was, at the time of the management transfer, I'll let you speak, Mike.
Sure.
There was just some time that had to happen in between.
Yeah, we've looked at regionalizing, just to make our dollar go farther, right? And so sharing resources with one or other communities has been, a time-tested technique that's been utilized over the years to hopefully, or to help communities get the services that they need. Unfortunately, I should point out that has to happen at not just the town manager level, those kind of discussions, but it's actually the Board of Selectmen that vote to enter into those intermunicipal agreements. So I'll have to say that's all on me. Mark has talked to me about it numerous times. It's just I have not necessarily had a chance to reach out to Blythe or a couple of other communities to see if we can make it happen.
Right, but if I continue, in the interim, couldn't we get somebody to fill that position so that the public health is well taken care of, our needs are taken care of, rather than waiting for a regionalization contract to occur? That may stretch on for a long time. And then if that's existence of public nurse is obsolete here, then we don't need that position. So that needs to be determined.
I was waiting.
So in that case, if it is not needed, then there's no need to go on then regionalization at all. So as of now, we have had no nurse for how many months?
We have had a nurse on call, but as it relates to the 5 to 8 hour position, Kara Banstra, our previous nurse, was on call still, had left for the school season, so starting in September, we have been
So
without.
for 3 months, we don't have it, but
3 to 5.
that's not any critical issues that will
Well,
affect
she's
us?
handling critical issues. She's handling our communicable disease cases. Fortunately, we have a nurse on our Board of Health. Mary's been helping out with flu vaccinations. We'd be in trouble if it wasn't. Mary always seems to come to the rescue when it comes to nursing services. We're very fortunate, but it's not fair to Mary, and Mary agrees. We need to look for a nurse. We've had placed an ad back when she left. The town of Upton sent a submittal to regionalize. I met that nurse. She seems very pleasant, wouldn't mind having her on our staff. But again, the consideration would be, would they give us as much time and effort as they do in their hometown? That's something Mike and I will have to discuss. The other person that was interested was just recommended to us from Elderly Service, but she hasn't yet submitted. I'll give Joanne another call, Joanne Duffy from Elderly Service, to see what the status is. She was supposed to call me last week. So we are trying to find someone. Before we went out to do a full-fledged ad, maybe in the newspapers, we were trying to work out if we wanted to go regional or if we wanted to go with someone not regionalized. Now at this point, I don't think Mike was nodding that we could probably look for someone to fill in the void.
And it's tough to find, I mean, to be fair, it's tough to find somebody who will work just for 5 to 8 hours.
Right.
Aren't there visiting nurses associations where people could reach out to? And
We
then get-
have, and that's what we went to, and as Mike mentioned it, and he's so right, it's so hard to find someone willing to work 5 to 8 hours a week. It's typically 5 hours, it's very hard. People are looking for full-time employment, but regionalization, in my view, on this position, works. And we really should, in my view, I would recommend to this board to recommend to management that we go that route as soon as we can. We have tried, we received a grant to regionalize. The concept came out a few years
Right.
back before your time, and we had a regional nurse.
I understand saving money is fine, but not at the cost of the public health. If there is a need for a nurse, that needs to be taken care of. How we manage to get them is the administration's problem, to get through the regionalization or not, whatever it is that you need to do. But getting one in place is important for us, then that needs to be done. So if one can put an extra effort in getting that done, I would appreciate it.
And I agree.
Okay.
And I'll work with
Madam
Mike,
Chair, I
continue
have
to
a
work.
couple questions.
Yes, Judy?
Could you expand on what you mean by epidemic, pandemic?
Well, I mean,
In what context?
You know, maybe I'm not necessarily using the correct definition.
Yeah,
so
yeah,
I
I'm not trying to
apologize.
be picky here, I'm just trying to get a
So-
sense of what you kind of
Well,
mean in
you know,
terms
I
of-
think what's been prevalent and what people hear about a lot is the opioid epidemic.
Okay.
It's not just hitting us here, it's not just hitting Metro West, it's hitting the state. And there have been significant state resources that are starting to flow into the problem, but we certainly need to do something on the local level as well. And I think we need to make more of a concerted effort, not just as the Board of Health, but just as a town, into that. And I hope to have some actions related to that in the future. You know, related to, I guess you could say on one end of the spectrum, hoarding has become more of an issue, and Mark and a couple of other department heads have really at least started to try to address that and putting together a hoarding task force, if you will, to basically develop a protocol. So if there's a response to a home for any reason, let's just say, you know, there's a complaint or, you know, there's a concern like a wellness check or something, and if an officer of the town goes into that home and sees evidence of hoarding, that they have a protocol that they follow to, you know, hopefully get that person help and to eliminate any of the public health risks that might be prevalent in that. And then on the other side, I would like to see us work with the schools to start addressing some of the mental health issues that some of our kids are facing. You know, the Metro West Student Health Survey is done, I think, every couple of years, and you know, that gives us, you know, a pretty good barometer as to what kids are facing, and apparently they're under like a tremendous amount of stress, and some of the mental health issues associated with that are coming forward, and in suicide attempts, hospitalizations. So I think it's something that we should have on our radar and see what we can do to address that.
Great. I think you hit the nail on the head with the survey. The mental health issues was the number one when they presented it at the high school. And you're also right on with what Decisions at Every Turn is putting a lot of effort into, because they just had that program at the library last week on Thursday. So all that's good. I guess when I heard those terms, I was thinking infectious disease is kind of what I was thinking. But so it's good I asked the question. And then the other thing, Mark had presented what I considered actually Mark's proposal, and there was discussion about what's on the piece of paper. We didn't really have input in terms of a creative way of looking at what we're doing. I think trend-wise, one of the things that I would emphasize is thinking creatively. Like, healthcare has really changed. The nurse of 30 or 40 years ago isn't the nurse of today, and that's possibly part of the employment situation, is because those nurses are now nurse practitioners. There are all sorts of other kinds of folks. And because the private market has jumped in so much in terms of vaccinations, and also because of health insurance, so many people have so many other options. I would think that that is something that would make more sense from a regionalization. Like, you tell your person, we don't do it here, but they do it down the road. You know, if you needed it free, you know, which a lot of people actually don't. It's really kind of a convenience thing, so they could go to those private marketplaces. I suspect it's not a major moneymaker, so that, you know, it's to the extent that we're looking. I mean, I support it as a public health concept. So, and I look at a lot of these other kinds of things as more creative, how we can save money by some of the other activities. And I know I've obviously said a lot of things in emails in terms of those types of activities, whether it's more efficient services. And I know at one of the recent meetings of the planning board, there had been discussion potentially of getting some additional help potentially in the department that this interacts with. So I would hope that maybe, being optimistic, we could potentially get a little extra help in terms of what I had suggested to Nat.
Yeah, I think moving in that data-driven decision is something that, it's my background, it's where I've come from, if you will. It's something I've impressed upon the staff. They've actually made pretty good strides, believe it or not. I mean, if you look at where we are now, it's certainly not where we want to be, but it's certainly a lot further than where we were. And I think a lot of that is a function of our limited staff resources, and I'm not trying to make excuses for, you know, not doing what we need to do. I think we are doing what we need to do, but are we getting the data we need to make sure that we're doing it the most efficient way and the most effective way? I think that's something that we're always trying to move forward with.
Thank you, Mike.
Madam Chair, I'm gonna have to start using some time management. We check with the clerk, because we have a post time and an end time.
Right.
We do need to end at 9:30. I'm gonna ask the chair and the board to be receptive that I take some of my items off so I can give the board time, but I do need to get through this notice on the budget to make sure the board will vote to support this when I submit it to Mike
Okay.
and the department. That's your FY17 budget proposals. Includes landfill routine testing. We need a new quote, but right now we're paying close to $10,000. And what concerns me is there could be the point where we need to test for Indian Brook and Sixdale Road, since they have wells that may need testing. The state requires we test them if we see issues at the landfill as it relates to a higher elevation of the chemical analysis. So I was proposing to do $1,100 for that part of the budget. Hopefully ECS, our contractor, will not go past $10,000 for the coming year. They've been a good contractor through the years, so, and $10,000 for that, and they don't need to know that, well, on TV, they may know that, and $1,000 for lab testing. That's what I would recommend on the landfill routine testing, as well as any private well testing that may need to be done.
So that's a total of
11,000, 10,000 for the contract. Hopefully they won't go up over possibly 5%, as well as 1,000 for the lab testing.
Madam Chair, is this number currently sealed, or could we go for a supplemental budget at a later time, or we have to?
We may, this is for discussion this Thursday with Mike and management. It may have to change, and I'd bring that right back to the board at the next meeting.
Right,
The budget
like
will be on it.
If we or any one of us feel that there is a need for additional funding to be done on a particular item, that we could still act on it, we have time for it?
I would ask the town manager.
Yeah, I mean, what I've encouraged our department heads to do is you know, not look at their budget number from the previous year and try to squeeze their budget request into that number, or that number plus a percentage, you know, like 2% or something like that. What I've asked is, you know, it be reasonable, the request be reasonable, but more importantly, they address an issue or issues that you're trying to tackle, and there is a way to demonstrate that the money is being used effectively, and it's having, we have a way to determine the outcome is being achieved that we're hoping to achieve. So if you come in and give me a budget request that's double your current budget, I'm gonna be like, yeah, it's not gonna happen, but.
Here's the door.
Yeah, you know, and if it's, you know, $20,000 more, I'm not saying we're gonna fund it, but I like to see that. I like to see, you know, my hope is that each department head and each board kind of has a vision of where they want to go, you know, collectively. And my job as a manager is to help prioritize that based on what I'm hearing from the town, and try to remove as many barriers as possible and try to get as creative as possible to you know, make that funding work. But what I do ask is that if you're looking to address a problem, we're able to measure it and see if the activity that we're proposing to do to fix it is actually having that kind of effect.
That makes sense.
The reason I raise this issue because there could be some costs involved in buying an equipment for checking the noise level. That's one, and the training also. And I believe that there is another issue with the suit that you wear for going into PPE,
Personal protective equipment.
So
There was-
those things, you know, if we need be, then we need to invest on it, and it is a good thing to do it if we want to keep a good atmosphere here in the
The noise meter, I've been speaking with the police chief. He's interested, talking with management first and working out a possibility of one or two things. One is, is it more cost-effective to look at an expert that does this as a route of living versus training someone that may leave and training someone that may not do it every day? That's between management, police, and if I have any updates for the board, I'll be glad to give them as I receive them. But as it relates to PPE, I was able to work with Ed Berman. He's on the police department. He connected me, as I noted before, with Trauma 24. It's just a matter, they want to come out and try to get several people. So right now I'm on the docket, but they're waiting for a few more to sign up.
Right, do we have enough equipment?
What's that?
Do we have enough suits that you need?
We have a bag
This is
with
mask.
personal
Mask and
protective
everything,
equipment.
whatever that you
Yeah.
wanted.
Yeah, the
Because
best I can utilize within, you know, the need.
Okay.
So, I'm not able to use scuba, self-breathing apparatus, that type of thing. That would be the fire department that's trained on a regular basis. This would be for lighter duty type work. The next three, I'm only trying to move because this meeting's supposed to be over in 5 minutes, per the state codes and
Are we
laws and the
still-
open meeting law. But the next three, if I may, connect I'll finish real quick. I know you just
We're not talking
wanted
about
to talk.
budget anymore?
That's what I'm on. I'm on this page
Oh,
of
okay.
the items. The next
Okay.
three could be paid through Homeland Security funds. As I always tell management, I'll read them off. Connect CTY, we pay about $3,300 into that. Dues and memberships, right now, we're recommending 400, we only have 100. Again, we pay the majority of that, but the board members, if it's not Homeland Security based, can't go. So, and training and conferences. So the memberships, the training and conferences, most of that can be paid, part of that can be paid through Homeland Security funding, if it's 50% or more for Homeland Security. The others, you know, aren't. So I would still ask for the dues and memberships to be raised to 400 versus the 100, so that the board members, MAHB can be paid, MHOA can be paid, and the national one. Training and conferences, we're asking for 1,000 right now. It's budgeted at 100. I would ask at least, if we're going to get Homeland Security funds, to bring that to 500 at least for the point of non-Homeland Security training, that, such as hoarding and others. Public health nurse vaccine purchases. We've always been interested in starting not just flu vaccine programs, but shingles and others. And we get recalls for that on a regular basis. And pneumonia. So we're hoping, and the state's not providing, so I have 3,500 in there. And since Mike mentioned it, in previous years, it's always been mentioned that we're understaffed. We do the best we can with what we have. We have a 5 to 7 hour food inspector per week. We have a nurse at 5 hours to be, as we just discussed. And the national recommendation is you have 1.7 people for Ashland. It's based on one health inspector per 10,000. We're close to 17,000 people. So we're shy at least a half-time person. And we do the best we can. We try to do what the board members request, but there's only so much time in a day. With that said, we have many demands from the development world and other areas of concern that Mike just brought up. Hoarding has become, taken up quite a bit of time, as well as these other issues that we're working with various groups in town. So, I mean, if Mike's willing to look at that, I'd be willing to submit it, if the board so wishes, to submit for a half-time position. Maybe that could be regionalized. Maybe we can consider someone doing certain parts of what we do, but it's definitely needed, you know, and I'd like to be able to do more for the board, but there's only so much time in the day to do it. On-call coverage. When I go away, basically the board knows you get a little email from me, not a little, an email, and basically I ask that you cover if I'm away, and I'll try to handle things by phone, and I respect and appreciate that, but I don't think that's always fair to the board members. It's a difficult situation. PPE might be needed, personal protective equipment, and so forth. So if the board so wishes, I can present what's on this page with the condition if we get Homeland Security money, it can pay for Connect CTY as well as for the training, some of the training conferences as I just presented, if the board so wishes, in a half-time position.
I have a small question.
Yes, KJ.
Regarding that 1.7 number, does it take into account your vacation time at all? Or does
The
it
1.7.
doesn't take into account, then you need to apply another full-time. That's what I
That's a good point. I don't know if it does.
Yeah,
But
look
the
at that,
1.7 was.
You
it
deserve,
did
you
go
deserve the
down.
vacation, but
Yeah,
the public
it's a good
deserves the
point.
people to serve.
Yeah, when I'm
So
not here,
in-
it's difficult. I agree.
It's better to hire a full-time rather than a half-time.
I understand. I agree with you. I thought about that as I said it. It's gonna be difficult to find a half-time person.
Yeah.
Would management be willing to accept the idea of a full-time person is not, I don't know what the answer's gonna be. Didn't mean to put you on the spot,
Well,
Mike.
you gotta think about your contractors too, and the time that they add.
No, I understand. I understand.
As well. That still doesn't bring you up to 1.7 by any means.
No, I understand.
Yeah.
Well, I could
Okay.
submit that as.
Madam
as-
Chairman, I ask a question.
Are you finished, Mark?
Yeah, I'm ready for questions.
Okay, Judy?
I'm actually, just, it's more than a question, it's a comment. I'm disappointed that, I was not aware that there's some, Thursday's a deadline, because this has been presented as similar to as it was tonight, as this is what I'm suggesting. Rather than us having the opportunity to problem solve and look at our priorities and look at the data, like until just now, I didn't know we had 5 to 7 hours of a personnel time for a food inspector. I didn't know those things. So without that information, it feels like it's almost impossible to even make a recommendation on personnel because we don't have that type of information. This discussion that you just heard is kind of how it all comes, and it doesn't feel substantial enough to even, so I would, when we vote, I'm most likely going to abstain at this point, just because but I just wanted to share that because I'd like us to do that better. I'd like us possibly even to break out and have a committee discussion on this, maybe just have a work session on budget, a work session on this, a work session on that, rather than letting long periods of time, like just elapsed, 6 weeks just elapsed, and we haven't had a meeting. So that's all I wanted to say.
And Madam Chair, if I may, I didn't
Yes.
realize that our food inspector, who's been at our meetings with this board, they didn't understand her time commitment. But as I always offered, and I have offered in the past, any board member that has questions, concerns, curious, just call me. Call me. We can possibly talk over the phone. We can possibly set an appointment up. I'd be more than happy to go over any questions the board may have. I can't always know what the board's wishing to know, and sometimes I will admit, I'm not for sure if the board knows we have a 5 to 7 hour food inspector. I'm sorry about that, and by all means, I'm more than open to offer some time. Like I said, time commitment is difficult, but I'm more than glad to open up that to the board, and I believe our town manager noted we're getting together to go over these things, but it's coming back to the board at the next meeting on what happened, and I'm sure there'll be some availability of changes between now and our next meeting in 2 weeks. And he's nodding his head yes. So thank you, Madam Chair. With that, the only thing I see that I didn't note is the vote on waivers for the food establishments, and the rest of my agenda I would ask to be curtailed.
Yes, Charlie?
Yes. There are no numbers here in terms of the on-call
Yeah,
coverage.
I did.
There's no numbers about a half person or a
There
7/10 person or whatever.
it just came up to mind when Mike said
All right,
20,000
so-
or 10%.
My
Sorry,
question
I
is
took it
probably
right away.
directed to town manager with regards to what do you need from us for you guys to have further communication? Just the concept, and you discuss numbers, or do you need a number from us?
No, I mean, numbers are good. I mean, if you're gonna put, let's just say, if you're gonna put another inspector on, or a half-time person that's, primarily going to be an inspector, I wanna know how many more inspections you plan on getting done as a board and as a department. And then, after we start getting that, then we can start looking at the outcomes and if it's having the effective outcomes. I mean, Mark and the board need to ask, okay, what's the purpose of doing health or food inspections? It seems very, very obvious, but sometimes when you start digging into the weeds, you gotta start, the best way to approach it is start asking yourself the question, how do you know you're doing a good job, right?
Madam Chair, may I
Yes, Judy.
respond? The thing with even that type of data, I have no clue how many food inspections we've done since I'm on the board. None at all, 0. I mean, I've asked for an Excel spreadsheet. So I would say the first step is actually, let's develop those spreadsheets, because then we can project. But without having that information, we're just completely at a loss. And when I brought this up at other meetings, I've been told that this is the time we would be getting the data, but the table I got was what's in the annual report. And to me, that's just not enough to understand, to project, and to make suggestions.
No, I agree.
Madam Chair, if I can, we do
Yes.
have that information available. Fortunately, we have it all computerized now, so it's a matter of a tab and providing it. We have information that's been requested by Judy, volumes of information that is waiting for 3 weeks. So you're more than willing to come in and get it and look at it and ask questions. I'll be glad to help.
Thank you, Mark, but
You're welcome.
the debate, we could go back and forth. There's a
No,
stack
it's not a debate.
of files. I mean, that's not,
It's
takes a
what you
lot.
requested. It's waiting for you.
Yeah, I mean, there's still a stack, I think, waiting on the desk that's
Right,
3 or 4 weeks
Nyanza,
old.
right, so I'm supposed to come in and look at the Nyanza stack, and, what I'm looking for, that compiled data in a spreadsheet type format whenever possible of the inspections specifically. But, I made a request for, water quality, and you probably know this. So I called the Mass DEP today, I actually called them yesterday. They called me back, he's gonna provide to me the town data that I was told that I would have to pay for as a public records request. As a member of the Board of Health, I was told that this department, the Department of Public Health, doesn't have water data, it's quality data. We don't know what's.
That's usually through Public Works, right?
Yeah, we get that on an annual basis. As David Menugian wrote to you, he said that we're still waiting for the data for this past year, and once we get it, he makes that available to all the departments.
I think it's great you got the data.
Yeah,
That's-
yeah.
Well,
If you could
correct,
share
but
it,
there's
that'd be great.
there's a difference between that annual report that comes in everyone's bill. That's what they're talking about. So we don't have, as a public health committee, we don't have what's happened in the last, anything that's happened in the last 13, 14 months. What he's really saying is we're gonna give you the look back of what was happening a couple of years ago, and it's not all of the data. I mean, there's raw data, there's a month, from what I've learned is there's monthly reports that are required, and Mass DEP is willing to give them to me, at least for what I've asked. So that's where I'm gonna go for now.
One of the things I would ask is just other communities, what do they do, and what's kind of the standard that they do? And, make sure that, we're kind of following in line with, because most communities our size are having similar budget issues, if you will, and staffing issues, and maybe see what the best practices are in those communities to see getting that type of information.
Right, so some of it's available electronically, can just automatically be sent.
Okay,
others
Mark?
can't.
If I just may add to, and on that data, if there is an issue with the town water, first of all, it's controlled and regulated by the DEP. If there is an issue, we are the first to be notified with the various other state agencies. So might it be a boil order that might be needed? We are ready and prepared to work with the DPW, but we are notified if there's ever an issue with the water. I just want the board to know DEP has that communication with us, so be assured that DEP does notify us.
Madam Chair, it doesn't hurt if two eyes look at the data. We don't want to be in a situation like what Flint is today. If somebody else looks at it also, and it's available, And it's better to modernize the system to make sure it's available in electronic form by scanning or spreadsheet or whatever it is.
Well, if I may,
So it's the best way to run through it so that the data can go through, the information can go through fast, and the results can come out easily and the decisions can be made better.
if I may, Madam Chair, you have three sets of eyes looking at it. You have the lab that tested first, and they have to report any levels above the state standards. You have the contractor, Wood and Curran, who would also see it, and DEP. So you got three sets of eyes. I mean, if you want a fourth, that's fine. It's a matter of what the town manager just said. It's a matter of managing time, and how much time do we have to do that if we have the other, and we know others are looking at it. So it's all for discussion. I'm not saying we can't. I'm just saying take into consideration the demands and the amount of time we have to handle those demands. Thank you.
Okay, we've now gone over our time limit.
Mark needs a vote though on waivers.
I was gonna ask.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, and the Board of Health minutes, they've been sitting for a long time, so I would ask those two. I mean, we're past.
I would object on the Board of Health minutes. I can pass out something if you're planning to. We have to go over them specifically, and I sent an email to the Board of
not table it.
Selectmen today, if you'd like me to pass this out.
I would suggest tabling it then, because
Yes,
we don't have the time. We're illegally meeting right now. It's past 9:30.
Hey, you still want to distribute those?
So we need a vote on the waiver for you, Mark?
For all those food establishments noted,
Yep.
and just, they're on a list I had in front of me.
Oh, wait a
I
minute.
do have a question on it,
Yes.
unfortunately.
I'm gonna recuse from this vote.
Could you-
since I'm
Okay.
a participant.
Yes.
The waivers, some of these establishments don't have grease traps?
What they all have, except for maybe one or two that do, no, they all have internals.
Internals.
What happened was when the regulation came out, the smaller restaurants and the ones that don't produce the enormous amount of grease that others do ask for waivers. So that started about 5 years ago. Those waivers were provided and we do the annual approval. Now, if Water and Sewer reports to us that they're having an issue
Okay.
with any of these requests, they'll let us know before we approve it. They let us know by the end of the year. They haven't had any issues reported.
That was my
That's-
question, if Chucky had looked at it.
That's one of the reasons that I was planning for getting the number of attendees of each of these restaurants to make sure it doesn't significantly go up, and then we find that that's an early indicator of what's going to happen in the
Right.
pipes.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's why I was looking at it, and then incidentally, I didn't get the data sheet for the number of vendors that we had, and which you had promised me in November.
It's
That's,
right.
and the other thing is also on the mosquito issue that I've been talking about. I believe there's a new virus called Zika virus that's also coming up here.
Well, I couldn't understand.
Zika virus, the new virus.
oh,
So I had
I thought you were
asked for
talking
the,
about Greece, so I
the
didn't
water
know.
bodies within the town, which private
Okay,
hands, and that data has not come up. So I've not been able to progress on my need. So I would appreciate if that can be hastened out and then brought up to the light.
Yeah, I haven't seen any requests for it, but I'd be glad to do that.
Request for what?
Zika, you mentioned?
No,
the
no.
virus?
I remember I wanted to get a data from the individual private pond owners or places.
Oh, wait, but yes, Kate.
So
That
that
was
we
back in
could collect the
November.
data instead of
Yeah.
sending one person there. So we seem to be acting only when there's a complaint. We don't have a preventive measure that we do.
remember that. I do
And then-
remember that, yes.
And then we are limited in terms of staff. We cannot be going and policing every centers.
Yeah. I
So if you make them to self-report it, and if you find an anomaly in that, and then just open up your eye and say, what's happened?
And
Then you
I-
go there and inspect.
It's a good point, and that's gonna take some time.
So
and
I've been
effort.
waiting for a couple of months to get that data, so especially the.
Who are you trying to get it from?
I thought you said you were going to get it from the MADEP or the mosquito control.
No, they're coming to our meetings, so they'll be able to present what they have available.
But they
Remember,
can't
we
ma- they
said
can't-
they don't keep it tallied, so we would have to.
I thought he's going to get it from their card,
they would
index
have to
card.
do
That's
that.
what you told me last
Well,
time.
if that's what he said, then we'll get that for you.
Okay.
You know, if he said that, and he's gonna be at either the next meeting or the meeting after that, so we can work with him on it. That's a good project, I'm not, that's a
Who
very
will
good
be
project.
coming?
Timothy Deschamps, who works for the Central Mass Mosquito Control Program. That's our regional central
Did he reach
mosquito.
out to you? I spoke with him a couple weeks ago.
Oh, good, okay, good.
Do you want a motion on that?
Yeah, we're back to the grease trap, I'm sorry, yes,
Yeah.
I would ask the board to consider that, and like I said, we're already past our meeting time.
So a motion, where are we, Mark?
It's on the exemptions for
A
the
vote
grease.
for the waivers
exter-
for the,
For the
for-
exterior grease traps.
Exterior grease
To
trap.
extend-
External
External.
grease traps.
External.
Extend, right, but last
external.
time we deferred it to be valid for up until January meeting, so we wanted some data or something
Right.
on that
Yeah,
one.
and DPW, Water and Sewer Department has
So
not-
what we want to do is we want to postpone it for the next meeting till that they will
We
permit it,
ha-
or we're going to give a
As I
blanket?
understand, they've signed off on it, correct?
Yeah, Water and Sewer has no complaints on it. See, if we had issues with anyone that doesn't have an external grease trap causing clogs, Water and Sewer will let us know. I
Do we
talked to Roy
know, do we know
Correa.
the specific list of people who have this facilities?
they're right here.
Yes, it's in
You
there.
it's
stop
in there.
coughing,
Okay.
that's a good thing.
So I'd recommend
Get
approval.
excited more and then you
Up
stop
through
coughing.
next, up to this December 31st, 2016.
All right, can I have a
Thank you.
motion to
So
that
moved.
effect? Second?
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No? One abstention?
I move to adjourn.
Madam Chair,
Move to
a point
adjourn.
of order.
Second.
Okay.
We're past time, Judith. I'm sorry, we have to adjourn.
I would suggest that we set our next two meeting dates now, because it was very problematic not meeting for 6 weeks.
Our regular meeting is scheduled for the second and fourth Tuesday in February.
Does anyone else see any need to have one sooner than that? Because I would be available if
No.
someone else.
And the time, you're limiting it to
We're limited.
9:30, and if the issues are,
We could post it 7 to 10. I don't think an extra half hour is going to get us through this type of an agenda with so many.
can we try that?
Can we try extra
I would
meetings?
suggest, if I may, Madam Chair, I suggest, let's see who's coming, let's see, we did have an excessive amount of people that wanted to be here.
Exactly.
We had the tobacco at the next meeting, if we only have one or two, you'll have probably a whole hour to
I will,
review.
I will meet with you, Mark, to
Okay.
set up that
That's-
agenda.
I suggest that.
See if we can shave it down or combine some
Excellent.
things.
Excellent.
It's the second and fourth Tuesday of February.
I can look it up, yeah, it's, I forget what it is, but it's.
Oh, incidentally, if it's not closed yet,
Not yet.
yeah.
We've had a motion.
Could- Yeah, motion, but it's still holding it. Is there a need or date that we can have for an executive session on issues that have come up?
Yes.
You have to state a purpose first, so I would suggest, if you want, I'll pass
The-
that by town attorney, that's the best I can do.
It's the issue with, that's going to the court. We don't know what the backgrounds are. and
We
things like
cannot discuss it,
that. Not in the open public, but executive session we can.
but we have to post a
Reason.
executive session with a
You don't have to
reason.
post the details, you can tell the title. That's what I understand.
Right, but we can't
Mike-
discuss it
Yes,
because
Mike
it's,
might
to discuss the conflict of whatever, between
Mike, did you
whatever
wanna
it's-
put in any input?
I mean, quickly.
Yeah, sorry, Mary.
Get me going.
It's okay.
No, if you want to do an executive session, you just have to put the purpose. You don't necessarily have to put the specific purpose, but I believe there are 9 exceptions to the open meeting law. If it's what I think you're talking about, it would need to be an executive session to discuss an issue that's currently involved in some kind of litigation.
right.
I'll shut up.
Okay, so I have a motion to adjourn the meeting. Do I have a second?
I second.
All affirmed, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Meeting is adjourned.
Get excited,
Have
Kate,
any-
you stop coughing.